everyone, welcome back to my channel and to a new video. I have had quite a week, I am thoroughly exhausted, it is quite late at night, but thank you for joining me on this journey. I could not be more grateful that you are here and we are doing this together. We are gonna get through this. I've had quite a stressful day. I just filmed a video for my second channel that was like a nice get ready with me, and my microphones ran out of battery halfway through, so it didn't record half the audio and I'm a little frustrated, so I'm determined that nothing is going to go wrong while we film this. Let's do this together. So I've reviewed a handful of Colleen Hoover books before, and each time I don't think they can get any worse, and yet they still do. So much worse. In my last video, if you haven't seen that, it is on screen right now and I will link to it down in the video description. I reviewed Colleen Hoover's book Slammed, which I thought would be a fun, silly little video. It ended up being a literal nightmare. I thought we'd be having a giggle together about Colleen Hoover just trying to write some poetry and it being really, really bad. And I mean, we absolutely did that. Her poetry was terrible. But it also ended up being so much more because, spoilers, I'm going to give you a quick review of the last book. If you don't want to hear this, I would recommend you go and watch the last video first or read the book for yourself if you fancy. Today we're going to be reviewing the second one in the series, so you kind of need this recap. The main love story in Slammed is about a teacher grooming his barely 18-year-old student. He manipulated her, he sexually assaulted her when she was unable to consent because she was a student in his care. He abused his power by forcing her and her friend into detention so he could force them to cover up his crime. He was repeatedly violent with her, dragging her around his house, locking her in the bathroom, putting her in some sort of arm lock, pouring water over her. He then physically beat up, and honestly I thought he was going to kill, a student of his because he thought that student was kissing Laken and into Laken, the girl that he was grooming. At the end of it, he stopped teaching at that school, got moved to a different school, which meant he wasn't Laken's teacher anymore, but he was still very much a teacher, and she was still very much an 18-year-old girl at school, and yet they now got a happy ending because they could be together. I know. It is literally a book romanticizing grooming and child abuse. Meanwhile in the story, Laken's parents are dead, Will's parents are dead, and now both of them are responsible for raising their little brothers. Today we are going to be looking at book 2 out of 3 in this series. This book is called Point of Retreat, and all that I knew going into this was that it was written from the perspective of the groomer, Will, and it takes place after the epilogue of the last book, almost directly after, like a week after. Will and Laken are now playing happy families, parenting their little brothers and pretending that he's not a predator. So that's kind of all you need to know before we review this book. Let's jump into it, shall we? This book begins with a prologue, which is a journal entry written by Will and is basically a recap of the last book and sets up everything we need to know for this book. So kind of like what I just did for you guys, but in the book. The last few years have definitely not been in our favour. At the end of 2008, my parents both passed away unexpectedly, leaving me to raise my little brother all on my own. It didn't help that Vaughn decided to end our 2-year relationship on the heels of her death. I'm sorry, but this is one of the first lines in the book, and there is a glaring grammatical error in the first few lines. Parents, parent apostrophe S, stop it. You mean multiple parents, not belonging to your parent. You don't need an apostrophe for a plural like this. How did no editors catch this? I did end up looking this up though, and it turns out that this error has thankfully been caught and corrected in the latest version of the ebook on Amazon. There's also a couple of other grammatical errors throughout this book that I found that have thankfully been corrected on Amazon. So little things like writing of instead of off, so with one F instead of 2, that's now been corrected in the updated ebook and stuff like that. But there were just so many throughout this book, it was really, really frustrating to read because I had an older copy. It's also frustrating that this book is supposed to be written from Will's perspective instead of Laken, and yet the voice is exactly the same. There is literally nothing to distinguish their voices, their writing style, any speech patterns, any way they phrase stuff. Like, it's just, they don't have distinct voices and it's quite frustrating. It is a sign of a poor author. It's also worth pointing out here that right in the first couple of sentences of this book, Will mentions his ex Vaughn, who wasn't a character in the last book. Like, she didn't appear, but she was mentioned, so the fact she's brought up here immediately made me think she was going to be a big part of this book. At this point in writing the script, my predictions were: 1, she appears back in his life and is like, oh my god, I made a huge mistake, I'm so sorry, I still love you, and that will be the main conflict of the book. Or 2, she appears back in his life and it turns out she dumped him to hide some big secret, like a pregnancy or something, and that's the main conflict in the book. It was one of those 2 things. I was right. I can predict Colleen Hoover like nothing else. Now, ideally, if she is going to come back into this book, what I would have liked to see was her coming back and be like, oh my god, you're dating your ex-student? What a predator. I'm calling the police. But sadly, this is a Colleen Hoover book, so we all knew that wasn't going to happen. And sadly, it doesn't happen. I'm sorry. Will continues to whine to us. I don't even remember the entire first half of 2010. That year didn't start for me until September 22nd, the day I first laid eyes on Lake. Of course, 2010 turned out to be just as difficult as the previous years, but in a completely different way. I'd never felt more alive than when I was with her, but considering our circumstances, I couldn't be with her. So I guess I didn't spend a lot of time feeling alive. I'm sorry, but your circumstances, just say what it is. She was your student, you were her teacher, you were grooming her. Let's not beat around the bush here. You're a predator. Anyway, he's all like, thank God I have Lake. And he says that he's going to keep a journal this year to be his therapy. No, get some real therapy, you predator. Part 1. Thursday, January the 5th, 2012. We get another journal entry from Will. I registered for classes today. I didn't get the days I wanted, but I only have 2 semesters left, so it's getting harder to be picky about my schedule. I'm thinking about applying to local schools for another teaching job after next semester. Hopefully by this time next year, I'll be teaching again. I was snarky in the script here. Are you ready for this? Because I was writing this reaction as I was reading the book, just like going through it for the first time, and I said, why? Is Lake getting too old for you now? She's 19 and you need to find a new victim? Stop it. You shouldn't be allowed anywhere near children. You know what? It has nothing to do with the plot of the book, but I stand by that. Snarky as it is, he shouldn't be allowed anywhere near children. Now, I know a lot of this like introductory bit is kind of just recapping the first book and blah blah blah, and all the stuff I didn't like about the first book aside, and all the reasons I hate this character aside, sorry, I'm dropping stuff. I always have to fidget while I'm talking. All that aside, I think what frustrates me most about the opening to this book is that nothing actually grabs my attention and makes me want to read more. It's really boring. The narrator is boring, no conflict is set up, nothing intrigues me, nothing is funny or clever or inspiring or it's just boring. It's really boring. Like, you could tell Colleen Hoover felt she had to put no effort into this because she just assumed people would read it anyway because they liked the characters from the first book. To draw a comparison with another book, which is very easy to read but very popular, I'm gonna just kind of draw a comparison here with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I have to say, I enjoy Taylor's books, I really do. They're simple, they're quick to get through, they're not exactly groundbreaking, and they're not like these big classic masterpieces, but I find them really fun, and for a relaxing read, I really quite enjoy her books. I like her writing style, I like her characters, I like her plots. I do like them. Not everything has to be like proper high art, sometimes you just want a good, enjoyable book, and I find that's what I get from a lot of Taylor's books. I've read, I think, all of her books at this point, except Carrie Soto, which I couldn't get into. I really tried, but I just don't like tennis. I have no interest in tennis, and with the first few chapters being all like, and then this tennis match, and I couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it. Anyway, not the point. I really, really liked a lot of her books. I think even though they are the most popular, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six are my favourites because they're fantastic. And I think, I don't know which one I prefer, but I do really like Daisy Jones just because the whole time period and music and aesthetic and everything, it's just, I love that style and everything. So that was a fun read. To draw the comparison with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I would say that even though Taylor is generally a better writer, her and Colleen kind of have almost like a similar target audience in that they're both writing for women. They both write books with romantic elements, and they both write books that are just kind of quite easy, casual reads, so I think it's fair to make this comparison. So The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo opens with a news article about the titular character, Evelyn Hugo, giving basically a rundown of her career, who she is, how she's setting up this charity auction now, which is the catalyst for the rest of the plot. Even the very first line grabs your attention. Film legend and 60s it girl Evelyn Hugo has just announced that she will auction off 12 of her most memorable gowns through Christie's to raise money for breast cancer research. immediately like, oh my god, who is this woman? I bet she has some great stories to tell. What will her public versus her private persona be? Is she still glamorous? Was she ever as glamorous as she seemed in front of the camera? Why is she auctioning off her gowns now? What's her life been like? Is there a reason she chose this breast cancer research charity to donate to? If so, what is it? You start to ask all these questions. And then, at the end of this short article introduction, we're told, now widowed from her 7th husband, Hugo resides in Manhattan. And again, the intrigue. 7 husbands, widowed, what happened? Why so many? Did she kill them? Is she unlucky? How does she feel about it all now? You immediately want to read more. And then you get this great switch in tone as we get into like the main plot of the book and looking at the characters and stuff. Taylor can write very distinct voices for the news article and the main narrative of her book. There's distinct voices. You never get that in Colleen's book, so there's just a difference in skill. But I think for a direct comparison, when you look just at the 2 prologues, you have this whole like, oh my god, death of her 7th husband, what? In Evelyn Hugo. Whereas Colleen Hoover's Point of Retreat prologue ends with, we're having dinner with Gavin and Eddie tonight. I think I'll make cheeseburgers. Cheeseburgers sounds good. That's all I really have to say right now. Which does absolutely nothing but make me think the narrator is shallow and boring with nothing to actually say. It doesn't grab my attention, it doesn't intrigue me. What's the point? So I thought it would be interesting to draw that point of comparison. Anyway, let's look at the actual text now, chapter 1. Turns out Laken is still living in the house that her mum was renting before she died. Will is still living across the street in his own house, so that's good, I guess. Oh my god. I said at this point, if she ends up being 19 years old and living with the adult man who groomed her at any point in this book, I will riot. Guys, we have to organise a riot now. Will's former students Gavin and Eddie is a girl by the way, who are also friends of Laken, they come over for burgers and it's clear that this kind of socialising is completely normal for him. And I asked at this point, does Will not have any friends his own age? No, he doesn't. I do think it is creepy that the only people he has to hang out with are his ex-students. I know. So Will and his little brother Calder tease Laken's brother Kel, yes, they're all real names, about his crush on their new neighbour Kirsten because, and I quote, Kirsten moved into a house on our street about a month ago and Kel seemed to have developed a slight crush on her. He won't admit it, of course. He's just now about to turn 11, so Lake and I expected this to happen. Kirsten's a few months older than him and a lot taller. Girls hit puberty faster than boys, so maybe he'll eventually catch up. Now, Will and Gavin, actually, basically every adult man in this book who interacts with this 11-year-old girl, makes really creepy comments about Kirsten, and it makes me very uncomfortable reading it. I said in my initial script here, why do I feel like this is just another excuse for Will to justify him grooming Laken when she was his student? This whole like, girls hit puberty faster, girls are more mature, meh, meh, meh. Because in the first book, he was all like, oh, Laken's just so mature, I didn't realise she was only 18, blah, 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 blah. All that nonsense, and now all of this nonsense. You know? And this creepy way of treating kids as older than they are continues as Kirsten shows up at as Kirsten shows up at Will's house and Will and Gavin discuss her. And please remember at this point, Will is 23, Gavin is 19, and they're talking about a barely 11-year-old girl. She's the 11-year-old girl I was telling you about. The one I think is an imposter based on the things that come out of her mouth. I'm beginning to suspect she's really a tiny adult posing as a little red-headed child. Given the context and what we know about Will and his history of grooming his students, I am uncomfortable. I don't know why Colleen Hoover had to include any of this. Do not like it. Will then tells us, Gavin and I have become pretty close this past year. It's good, I guess, considering how close Eddie and Lake are. Kel and Calder really like him too. It's nice. I like the setup we all have here. I hope it stays this way. Which means it absolutely will not stay this way. Colleen then makes Kirsten, the 11-year-old, super edgy by making her use swear words and boasting about how swear words are just social constructs that we shouldn't have so much stigma around. Although she doesn't phrase it quite as succinctly as that. It's a sentiment that I don't hate, I just hate the way Colleen Hoover writes it. Will then goes on about how Kirsten is so much smarter than the other kids her age, and again, When we consider this adult man is a teacher with a history of grooming his students, it just feels creepy and wrong and I don't like it. Can you please step away from the children? She then goes on this rant about how you could totally just decide I can't even speak. She basically starts ranting that you could just decide that the word butterfly is a swear word and blah blah blah, and then everyone is like, oh my god, that's so funny and witty and clever, and they all start using the word butterfly instead of actual swearing, and it is so cringy I want to die. I wrote in my script, I hope this is just another thing Colleen Hoover sets up and forgets about, like Kel's backward days in the first book, because if this keeps reoccurring, I may cry. Spoiler, I'm going to be crying a lot through this book. Why is this the terrible, annoying, cringy thing she had to remember to keep coming back to? Then everyone goes around the table for a game of suck and sweet time, which is where you say the best and worst part of your day. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible phrase, but also it's just used as an excuse for each character to basically fill us in on where they are in their lives since the last book. It's an excuse for an exposition dump, basically. Eddie, it turns out, is now in college and creepily still calls Will Mr. Cooper, which kind of makes sense because, you know, he was her teacher, but also I hate it. Gavin is now a pizza delivery driver. He also still calls Will Mr. Cooper, and I hate it. Laken has lost her phone because she's always losing her phone, which is something you just... Well, I said here, this wasn't even close to being a character trait in the first book, so you just know this is going to be relevant later in this book. But it's not. It's not relevant at all. There's a bunch of references to, oh look, Laken's lost her phone again, Laken's lost her phone, but it's never actually relevant to the plot. Kind of annoying. Yeah. Laken then also calls her ex-teacher slash groomer slash now boyfriend Mr. Cooper, and I think I need a bucket to puke in. Can we not make grooming and dating your teacher while you're still in school some cutesy, romantic, ha ha ha, it's so funny joke thing? Can we not? Can I finish my food now? Lake says, pointing to her plate that's still on the other side of me, out of her reach. I scoot the plate back in front of her. Thank you, Mr. Cooper, she says. I knee her under the table. She knows I hate it when she calls me that. I don't know why it still bothers me so much. Probably because when I was her actual teacher, it was absolute torture. Oh no, I'm sorry, are you uncomfortable that you're being reminded that you're a groomer? You know there's a solution for that, and it would be to not groom your students in the first place. Don't groom kids and you won't be called a groomer, okay? After all the little kids leave, Eddie then says, I really like that girl, Eddie says after Kirsten leaves. I hope Kel asks her to be his girlfriend. I hope they grow up and get married and have lots of weird babies. I hope she's in our family forever. Yeah, can we not talk about literal 11-year-olds like this, please? Can we not force kids as young as 11 to think they have to get married and have babies one day? Can we not perpetuate this idea that the first person you date has to be the person you marry? Like, it's an 11-year-old with a crush. How can you be like, oh, I hope they have babies? It's creepy and weird and wrong. Don't like it. Just let them be kids with a little innocent, harmless crush and let them figure things out in their own time. Just stop it. Will and Gavin then make a bunch of sexist comments, which I think are meant to be jokes, but no one laughs, and it ends up with the men getting their way, so I thoroughly hate this. I just sigh. She's impossible to control. You're cleaning up tonight, I say to her. You too, I say to Eddie. Gavin, let's go watch some football like real men while the women do their job. Gavin scoots his glass towards Eddie. Refill this glass, woman. I'm watching some football. While Eddie and Lake are cleaning the kitchen, I take the opportunity to ask Gavin for a favour. What? How? What? Yeah, can we not do this, please? Basically, Will asks Gavin to babysit tomorrow night so he can have some alone time with Laken and give her a gift. And Gavin says yes. So then Will is like, hey, Laken, after you're done cleaning the kitchen, what are your plans for tomorrow night? And Laken says, she replies. She rolls her eyes. What kind of question is that? You're my plan. You're always my only plan. Yeah, codependency is not cute. Can we not romanticize that, please? And then, well, we get a whole bunch of stuff that I did not need to read. You ready for this? They have a little kiss on the settee for a while. He's on top of her. I release her hands and she grabs my face and pulls my mouth to hers. We continue kissing until we get to the point of retreat, as Lake likes to call it. She climbs out from under me and sits up on her knees as I roll onto my back and remain in the floor. Another typo. We don't like to get carried away when we aren't the only ones in the house. It's so easy to do. When we catch ourselves taking things too far, one of us always calls retreat. Now, I was really confused by all of this because while I don't think these two individuals should be in a sexual relationship because, you know, the whole him being her teacher and power imbalance and grooming and not able to consent thing, it did shock me that if we take all that out of the equation, it shocked me that a 19 and 23-year-old pair of adults who, like, neither of them have any religious or moral convictions about wait until marriage or waiting at all or anything like that, are acting like a couple of teenagers. I was like, I don't get it. It's really weird to me because it's clear they want to have sex with each other, but they're waiting for plot reasons. Like, that's all it is. So it turns out at first it's because of the dead mum. I know. Before Julia passed away, we made the mistake of taking things too far too soon. A crucial mistake on my part. It was just 2 weeks after we started officially dating and Calder was staying the night at Kel's house. Lake and I came back to my place after a movie, we started making out on the couch, and one thing led to another, neither of us willing to stop it. We weren't having sex, but we would have eventually if Julia hadn't walked in when she did. She completely flipped out. We were mortified. She grounded Lake and wouldn't let me see her for 2 weeks. I probably apologised a million times in those 2 weeks. And again, the whole teacher thing aside, what the hell? If my mum had tried to control my sex life when I was an 18-year-old, I would have been furious because I was 18, you know? None of her business. And the thing is, like, he's a 21-year-old adult man and a teacher. Like, if you're dating someone whose mother is still involved in their sex life, they are definitely too young for you. If you can't see your girlfriend as an adult man because she's grounded, she is too young for you. All the teacher stuff aside, she's too young for you. She eventually sat us down together and made us swear we would wait at least a year. She made Lake get on the pill and made me look her in the eye and give my word. She wasn't upset about the fact that her 18-year-old daughter almost had sex. Julia was fairly reasonable and knew it would happen eventually. What hurt her was that I was so willing to take that from Lake in such a short time frame after only 2 weeks of dating. It made me feel incredibly guilty, so of course I agreed to the promise. She also wanted us to set a good example for Kel and Calder and made us swear we wouldn't spend the night at each other's houses during that time frame either. After Julia passed away, we've stuck to our word, more out of respect for Julia than anything. Lord knows it's more than difficult sometimes, a lot of times. Yeah, this explanation doesn't make anything better, and I think what gets to me the most is this idea that sex takes something from a woman. Like being like, oh, I can't believe you would take that from Lake. Because Laken's a virgin at this point, but her having sex isn't a man taking something from her. If she chooses to have sex, that's her gaining an experience. It's not a man taking anything away from her. And it's completely up to her what time frame she wants to do that in. If she wants to do it after 2 weeks of dating someone, if she wants to do it after a year of dating someone, let her. As an 18-year-old, it is her choice. I mean, obviously it's complicated here by the whole power dynamic and teacher and consent thing there. But that aside, as an 18-year-old, if she was, say, with another 18-year-old, she should absolutely be able to make that choice for herself without her mother being like, he's taking something from you, Lake. It bothers me. I'm just baffled by all of this. It turns out that, like, them not having sex is just basically for the plot, because Colleen wants to drag it out. They both really, really want to do it. They just decide not to for reasons, because at this point it has been over a year since the mum made them promise to wait a year. So yeah, it is a complicated topic. It's a very nuanced one, and I kind of wrote down some thoughts here that I've kind of slightly rambled about here, but I think maybe I was a little more concise here. Maybe I was explaining myself. I don't know. I said, basically, in my original script, I said, I understand the mum being angry about a teacher trying to have sex with his ex-student, But the response to that is to call the police, not to ground her for 2 weeks and make them wait a year. Because it doesn't matter if they wait a week or a year, it's still inappropriate because of their relationship. But at least this exemplifies how complicated this issue is and how we have to be really nuanced while discussing these topics like grooming and CSA. Because just because an age of consent is a certain age in a state or a country, that doesn't necessarily make it appropriate for adults to try and get with kids of that age, for example. So in the UK, age of consent is 16, right? And I fully believe that every 16-year-old has the right to decide for themselves whether they are ready to engage in sexual activity with someone of the same age as them. So someone else who is 16 or 17 or potentially 18, you know? Kids they go to college or school with or whatever. I think that is absolutely their choice. However, I don't think it's okay for an adult man in his 20s and older to come along and attempt to have sex with a 16-year-old just because of age of consent. As soon as you start making one party considerably older or putting one of them in a position of power, that's where the younger or more vulnerable one becomes unable to properly consent, and that's when, you know, figuring out what's ethical or not becomes trickier to decide to figure out. So I guess what I'm saying here is Laken is absolutely capable of controlling her own sex life as an 18-year-old woman who's interested in other 18-year-olds she maybe goes to school with, but when it comes to someone having a position of power over her like her teacher, she is unable to consent to that regardless of her age. That's why people can be victims of grooming at any age, even adults can be groomed. Does all this make sense? I don't want people thinking I'm being contradictory here because it's a really, really complex topic. On the one hand, I'm like, she's 18, her mother should butt out of her decisions and stop trying to control her. But on the other, I'm like, but this isn't just an 18-year-old deciding whether to have sex or not, this is an 18-year-old being groomed. So it complicates things. It's difficult. But anyway, yeah. Turns out the entire book is named after this idea of point of retreat, I can't even speak, where they want to have sex and they decide not to because it's convenient for the plot. And it just keeps happening. Even though now they no longer have this promise to her mother because it's been over a year and blah, 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 they keep deciding to retreat because it's convenient for the plot and dragging it out, and it's really, really stupid. This entire book is about them having sex. And I hate it. So in the last Slammed video, we spoke about how Colleen Hoover books all have a gimmick. In this one, it's that each chapter opens with a diary entry from Will. However, so far, these have added absolutely nothing. Honestly, throughout the entire book, they add nothing. I don't think they have a point. like this one, for example, look at this. It tells us nothing we didn't already get in the last chapter. It's written in the same voice and the same point of view, the same everything as the main chapters of the book, so I don't understand why they're there. We don't need them. Chapter 2. Laken gets all excited and dressed up to go out on a date, only for Will to be like, haha, we're staying in. So for a while they eat pasta, and Laken thinks Will has just invited her over to have sex, but he's like, oh no, not that. And it's all weirdly spoken about through innuendo and code words. They never actually say, are we having sex? They never once in this book have a direct conversation about it. It's always like, well, I guess we could do it. All this stuff like using terms like point of retreat instead of just saying, no, I'm not ready and all that nonsense. And I've said this in many videos. I just feel like if you can't speak openly about sex with your partner and communicate your needs to them and listen to their needs, then you're not ready to be having sex with them. It's as simple as that. You should at least be able to say words to your partner so you know you can communicate your needs effectively. You should be able to say words like sex, penis, vagina, yes, no. You know what I mean? But it turns out, no, this isn't about sex. Instead, Laken's mum left them a present to open together, and that's what this night is all about, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, how awkward would it be if they'd broken up by this point? Oh, God, I kind of wish that had happened. It would be funny. Anyway, Laken creepily calls him Mr. Cooper again, and I would like a petition for this book to always be sold alongside a sick bucket, please, because I need it. Really do. Inside the box is, and I quote, a clear glass vase. Inside the vase, it's full to the brim with geometric stars in a variety of colours. It looks like origami. Hundreds of thumbnail-sized 3D paper stars. There's a letter too. Will and Lake. Love is the most beautiful thing in the world. Unfortunately, it's also one of the hardest things in the world to hold on to, and one of the easiest things to throw away. Neither of you has a mother or a father to go to for relationship advice anymore. Neither of you has anyone to go to for a shoulder to cry on when things get tough, and they will get tough. Neither of you has someone to go to when you just want to share the funny or the happy or the heartache. You're both at a disadvantage when it comes to this aspect of love. Seems a bit harsh to the people reading who don't have parents or a relationship with them, but okay. You both only have each other, and because of this you will have to work harder at building a strong foundation for your future together. You are not only each other's love, you are also one another's sole confidant. What about the little brothers, the friends, the grandparents, the everyone else in their lives? You're really reinforcing this codependency is cool thing, and I do not like it. This is why having a whole support network is really, really important. You can't just place all of that on one person like Colleen Hoover repeatedly does in every single book of hers. I handwrote some things onto strips of paper and folded them into stars. It might be an inspirational quote, an inspiring lyric, or just some downright good parental advice. I don't want you to open one and read it until you truly feel you need it. If you have a bad day, if the two of you fight, or if you just need something to lift your spirits, that's what these are for. You can open one together or you can open one alone. I just want there to always be something both of you can go for if and when you ever need it. You know what? Okay, cute idea. I don't actually hate it. You know, I once had a guy make me a joy jar and he filled it with all these lovely things, you know, little slips of paper with like nice memories on, lines from poems I loved. I thought it was really, really sweet and I really, really treasured that jar. I kept it, I looked at it often, I thought it was amazing, until it turned out that the guy was a cheating piece of crap liar who couldn't control his penis and would cancel his plans with me to sleep with other girls. So screw that guy and his joy jar. That aside, yeah, seems quite nice from this mum, doesn't it? The mum continues the letter with, Will, thank you. Thank you for coming into our lives. So much of the pain and worry I've been feeling has been alleviated by the mere fact I know my daughter is loved by you. Sorry, I think she actually miswrote this line. I think it should have been, Will, screw you for grooming my daughter and making her dependent on you while limiting her life in many ways and isolating her from a large chunk of her peers. I've called the police. It's interesting how badly she miswrote that, isn't it? Then she says to Laken in the letter, you couldn't have picked anyone better to love if I would have hand-picked him myself. And I'm sorry, but what does that even mean? I do not like that. You know, I would not trust my mum to pick a partner for me. Like, why? Colleen Hoover strikes me as one of these, like, boy mums who is like, my little boy can't do any wrong and blah 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 and I should pick out his girlfriend, and then she picks out someone who's exactly like her but won't be a threat to her, and this just gives me bad vibes, you know? So after reading the letter, Laken touches Will's chest and he's all like, we need to retreat. And she's all like, but I want to. And he's like, I'm ready too, but not here, not right now. You'll just have to go home and in an hour when the boys get back. I don't think I could take it. And then he tells her that they have to wait another 2 weeks for reasons, basically just to drag out the plot of this book. That's all. Will then makes a joke about the time he physically assaulted her in the first book by saying, you want me to throw you in the shower again? Cool you off? I will if that's what you need. You mean when you threw water over her, dragged her around by her wrists, locked her arm behind her back, pushed her in the shower, covered her in freezing water, and then locked her in the bathroom until she did what you wanted? Ha ha ha. What a funny threat to make and reminisce about, abuser. Gavin then calls saying that the kids have vomited and he's bringing them back home, and the chapter ends. We are now 13% of the way through the book and nothing has happened yet. I'm fed up. Chapter 3. This one starts with another oh so useless journal entry. I butterflying hate cheeseburgers. Stop it. I wrote in my original notes here, this is so stupid and pointless. Please do not make this butterfly thing a recurring joke. It's so stupid I want to cry. I'm reading the ebook, but this still feels like a waste of paper. Yeah, I was very unhappy by the end of the book. If I was unhappy here, it only gets worse. Turns out everyone has food poisoning. The mum of the kid, Kirsten, comes over with a miracle cure for everyone. Her name is Sherry. There's then just pages of nothing. Laken apparently looks as rough as Will, but still beautiful and sexy. I don't like it. Will also says, we've brought up the subject of living together before. It makes economic sense. Our bills will be cut in half. She's only 19 though, and she seems to like having her alone time. The thought of taking such a huge leap makes both of us a little apprehensive, so we agreed to wait on that step until we're certain about it. Yeah, you think? She's 19. Give her some space and a chance to actually live a life for herself. you know? So far, she doesn't actually seem to have any other friends, any social life, a job, or a life outside of him and their brothers. Even uni work is a rush to get in as much as possible, as quick as possible, you know? She's like kind of still getting her education, but she's attempting to rush through it so she can just spend as much time with Will as possible. It's really unhealthy and concerning. Blah blah blah, they're all really ill over the weekend. This is like 3-day food poisoning, so God knows what they did to those burgers, but yeah. Then they get better. On Monday, Will heads into college, and of course he... I kind of forgot about this bit, oh my god. So I said, because he's the edgiest of all Colleen Hoover characters and writes poems with titles like Death, with lines like, people don't like to talk about death because it makes them sad. Yes, that's an actual line from one of his poems in the first book. Because he's super, super edgy like that, he takes a college class called Death and Dying. I actually forgot about this because after like the first, I don't know, like 5 chapters or something, it never comes up again. It's just not relevant. Oh my god, Colleen Hoover doesn't know how to plot out a book, does she? Every time I think Colleen Hoover's a bad writer, she does something to make me realise she's even worse than I thought she was, you know? Anyway, then, oh my god, biggest shock ever, like we didn't guess this was gonna happen from the first page. It turns out that his ex is in his college class with him. She's, for some reason, doing her master's at the same university on the same topic at the same time. Yeah, I can't see that causing any problems, can you? As my eyes make their way around the room, I notice a girl with blonde hair in the front row turned completely around in her seat. When I meet her gaze, my heart sinks. She smiles and waves when she sees I've recognised her. She turns back around, gathers her things, and then stands up and makes her way up the stairs. No. She's coming towards me. She's about to sit with me. Oh god! Well, oh my god, what are the chances? It's been so long, she says. I do my best to smile at her. I don't understand my reaction right now. I can't tell if it's anger or guilt or what. Hey, Vaughn. I try to sound pleased to see her. We haven't seen each other in almost 3 years. She knows we parted on bad terms, to put it mildly. Yet she's acting like she's genuinely excited to see me. I wish I could say the same. So this is his ex. Of course she's blonde because Laken's brunette. They both talk about their brothers. And then Vaughn is like, how about you, Mr. 23-year-old? Are you married? Like, that's a normal thing to ask 23-year-olds. Why does Colleen Hoover just want everyone to get married so young? Bothers me. I don't like this. I don't like how she's looking at me. I've seen that look from her before. We dated for over 2 years. I know her pretty well. And right now, her intentions aren't good for me. Okay, so if you think she's still into you and you've got a girlfriend, you stop the conversation right there. It's not difficult. You just say, hey, look, I'm in a relationship and I'm just getting vibes from you and I don't think it's appropriate for us to be friends right now. I don't really want that. I'm with someone else. Sorry. That's it. And then you just stop talking to her. Easy. It doesn't have to be a big issue, you know? I'm not married, but I am dating someone, I clarify. I can see the slight shift in her expression, but she attempts to mask it with a smile. Good for you, she says. Is it serious? She's digging for hints. I don't think she's digging, I think she's just straight up asking. Very. We both face the front of the room when the professor starts explaining the semester's requirements and going over the syllabus. The rest of the hour we don't speak much other than occasional questions from her regarding the class information. When the professor dismisses us, I quickly stand up. It's really good seeing you, Will, she says. I'm excited about this class now. We have a lot of catching up to do. I smile at her without agreeing. The smile kind of says you're agreeing, but okay. She gives me another quick hug and turns away. I gather my things and head to my second class as I think of a way to break this to Lake. Well, it's not difficult. You either call her up now, drop her a text, or when you get home, you say, hey, by the way, I took this class. Weirdly, my ex is in it. And you make it very clear that you set boundaries with your ex, which he should have done and he didn't. And then you stick to those boundaries. Simple. After that, you continue to clearly communicate with Laken, and that's about it. That's the only decent thing you can do in this situation. It's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be a big deal if you deal with it properly and responsibly. Lake has never asked about my past relationships. She says there isn't anything good that can come up from discussing it, so we never have. I'm not sure she even knows about Vaughn. She knows I had a pretty serious relationship in high school. She even knows I've had sex. We talked about that. I don't know how she'll take this. I'd hate to upset her, but I don't want to hide anything either. But what would I be hiding? Is it really necessary to tell her who all the students are in the classes I'm in? We've never discussed it before, so why do I feel the need now? If I tell her, it'll just cause her to worry unnecessarily. If I don't tell her, what harm is it doing? Lake's not in my class. She's not even in school the days I am. I've made it very clear to Vaughan that I'm in a relationship. That should be good enough. By the end of my last class, I've successfully convinced myself that Lake doesn't need to know. I hope Lake dumps you. Look, I'm very aware that I'm speaking about this from a position with a lot of bias. Look, I'm not a journalist. I'm not an unbiased news source. I'm a book reviewer and social commentator who puts all their opinions into everything they do. And I have to admit, I am very biased when it comes to this, because I do not put up with lies in relationships. I have had too many people lie to me about stuff like this. Dan did it when we started dating, and it caused us so many problems for like the first year. James did it. Johnny did it constantly. Other people have done it. Sam, he lied. I can't deal with it, and I will not deal with it anymore. Together, they messed me up so much to the point where I couldn't trust anyone for a really, really long time. And now I have like an absolute zero tolerance policy with lying. So the way I see it, it's not up to my partner to decide what information is important for me to know and what isn't. Just like it's not my decision to decide what information is important for my partner to know or not. What he wants to know, what he deems important, I will of course tell him, and I expect the same in return. It's about open communication, and that's how you build trust. If you're both open about everything and put everything out on the table and communicate, that's how you can work through stuff together, you know? I've had people who were interested in me or who I've been on a few dates with or whatever reach out to me since I've been with Kieran. And I'm always like, hey, I'm still with Kieran. Just so you know, this isn't appropriate and I'm not going to be entertaining this. And I'm pretty open with it. Often I'll like show Kieran the messages and just be like, hey, just so you know, so-and-so reached out and this is what I said to them. And I'm really open with him. So yeah, sorry to people like Josh and Charles, but yeah, Kieran's seen your text to me. He's never like asked to see them, but I think it's important for us to share that sort of thing because it builds trust when you have that transparency. And yeah, that's important to me. So I feel like if you feel the need to hide something like seeing your ex every day from your partner, then you're being dishonest about something, and I think you're trash. It's crazy because like with those people who lied to me a lot and hid things from me and cheated on me and stuff like that, I of course was incredibly paranoid and didn't trust anyone, and I was a bit of a mess, and they all told me the same thing. You're crazy, you're broken, you're insecure, you're jealous, you're paranoid, you're this and this and this. And I was like, for a long time I was like, oh my god, this is all my fault. These are all my problems and my insecurities and that sort of thing. And then I went to see a therapist and was like, how do I fix this? How do I do this stuff? And she was like, well, have you know, like, what are you like with partners who don't lie to you? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I've never really experienced it. And then I met Kieran, and he's never lied to me. And I was seeing my therapist through basically like the entire first year of our relationship, and I didn't have any of these issues. I was never paranoid or crazy or insecure or anything like that, because it turns out when people don't give you a reason to not trust them, you don't not trust them, you know? And my therapist was very much like, yeah, I don't think this is a you problem. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's kind of shifted my entire perspective. And it means that like now, yeah, I really don't have any tolerance for lying and stuff like that. And she gave me the confidence to actually like enforce those boundaries and, you know, have this zero tolerance policy. And it's made my life a lot better. It's great. It turns out that all this time I was like trying to change something about myself, and all I needed to do was actually date a decent human being like Kieran. Crazy, right? Anyway, in summary, I hated Will before because he's a groomer, and somehow I hate him even more now. Absolutely disgusting human being, even though he's a fictional character. It also turns out that two barely competent young people are not good at raising children, as Will finds out when he has to pick up Kel and Calder from school. So not only has his cooking just given them 3 days of food poisoning, but their teacher is waiting to talk to Will because it turns out that their friend Kirsten is being bullied, so Kel and Calder decided to go full psychopath on the bullies. It's not what they did, really. It's what they said. In a note. She takes a piece of paper out of her pocket and hands it to me. I unfold it and look at it. My mouth gapes open. It's a picture of a bloody knife with the words, "You will die, asswipe," written across the top of it. Kellen Calder wrote this, I ask, embarrassed. Yeah, I wouldn't be embarrassed. I would be scared and get these kids in therapy as soon as possible. I understand wanting to protect your friend from bullies, but threatening murder isn't the way to go about that. Like premeditated murder. That's not a normal response to anything, especially in 11-year-old kids. I would be concerned. The boys are suspended for school from school for a week, and Will's response is really odd. The boys climb into the back seat and we drive home in silence. I'm too pissed at them to say anything right now, or at least I think I'm pissed. I'm supposed to be, right? Laken's response is equally as concerning. Lake shoots me a confused look when I walk through the living room and motion for her to follow me to the bedroom. I shut the door behind us for privacy and explain everything that's happening, showing her the note. She stares at it for a while, then covers her mouth and tries to hide her laugh. She thinks it's funny. I feel relieved because this was my initial reaction too. When we make eye contact, we both start laughing. I know, Lake. From a sibling standpoint, it's really funny, I say. But what are we supposed to do from a parent standpoint? She shakes her head. I don't know. I'm sort of proud of them for taking up for Kirsten. She sits down on the bed and throws the note aside. Poor Kirsten, though. I'm sorry, but you're proud of them for sending death threats. That's not a normal response to anything. A normal response would be like telling the teacher, or maybe shouting at them to leave her alone, or if they were physically hurting her, I could understand like a quick, split-second decision of like pushing them off her or something like that. But not calm, calculated death threats. That's not normal. I mean, let's remember these boys have been through some crap in their life. They have both lost their parents. Calder, in particular, literally saw his parents die in front of him. They're going to be messed up, and now they're doing this. This is a sign to get them some therapy before they actually hurt someone. Will then gushes for a while about Laken's maternal instincts, and I'm like, where? This is quickly followed by, if I left my head out of it and just followed my heart, I'd marry her today. Stop it. Leave your ex-student alone. Don't ruin her life anymore. Then we get a huge pet peeve of mine. So not only we had a lot of grammatical errors throughout this book, but Lake is like, screw parenting. What are we going to do about having sex this weekend? And Will says he doesn't exactly care whether they stay home or go somewhere, but how he says it is, I could care less. We could stay here at my house for all I care. Stop it. You mean you couldn't care less? You could not care less. Couldn't, could not could. Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. This bothers me so much. Why do so many people get this wrong? It doesn't even make sense. I would like to squeal. Then they're like, oh, wait, crap, let's stop talking about sex for a second and thinking about sex and remember we have to parent our psychopath children. I know the solution here is we should be immature about it. And then Will's violent side comes out again as a joke. This scene is disturbing, and these two should not be in charge of any sort of children. Where the hell are social services? I know what to do, I say. Let's scare the butterfly out of them. Stop it. How, she says. Act like you're trying to calm me down. Act like I'm really pissed off. We can make them sit out there and sweat for a while. She laughs. You're so bad. She stands up and walks close to the door. Will, calm down, she yells. I walk over to the door and hit it for extra emphasis. I will not calm down. I'm pissed. Lake throws herself onto the bed and pulls a pillow over her face to stifle her giggles before she continues yelling. No, stop it. You can't go out there yet. You need to calm down, Will. You might kill them. I glare at her. Kill them, I whisper. Really? She laughs as I hop back on the bed with her. Lake, you suck at this. No, Will, not the belt, she yells dramatically. I clasp my hand over her mouth. Shut up! I laugh. I'm sorry, but I don't find child abuse and threatening it funny. I don't see that as a punchline to a joke. When I was a kid, I was hit a lot by my adult brother. There were like 10 years between us, so he was considerably bigger than me and stronger than me, and he would hit me so hard that I would literally have these like red swellings on my skin in the shape of his hand where he would hit me, or he'd hit me around the head so hard that like the world would spin. It was terrifying and I hated it. So I don't find this kind of joke funny. Sorry. Anyway, in the end, Laken, full of giggles, just like grounds them for 2 weeks. So at least no one actually gets hit. I guess that's a positive. There were just threats of it. I guess Will is fine with abusing female children in his care, just not boys. Interesting. End of the chapter, and chapter 4 starts with Will writing terrible, terrible poetry in his journal, like worse than the ones in the last book. Are you ready for this? If I were a carpenter, I would build you a window to my soul, but I would leave that window shut and locked, so that every time you tried to look through it, all you would see is your own reflection. You would see that my soul is a reflection of you. Now, everything else aside, did you mean glazier? Because carpenters don't fit windows. That's what a glazier does. Also, the rest is stupid. It's a terrible poem. There is no rhythm or imagery, or it doesn't make sense. I can't deal with this codependent rambling nonsense. I want it to stop, please. Anyway, we skip forward to Wednesday, and Will has another class with Vaughn again, so of course Laken still doesn't know. My stomach is in knots Wednesday morning. I really don't want to see Vaughn today. I try to leave a few minutes sooner, hoping I can make it to class early enough to pick a seat next to someone else. Unfortunately, I'm the first to arrive. I take a seat in the back again, hoping she doesn't want to make the trek to the back of the room. She does. As soon as she spots me, she smiles and runs up the steps, throwing her bag down on the table. "Morning," she says. "I brought you a coffee. 2 sugars, no cream, just like you like it." She sets the coffee down in front of me. "Thanks," I say. She's got her hair pulled back in a bun. I know exactly what she's doing. I told her once that I loved it when she wore her hair like that. It's no coincidence she's wearing it today. "So I was thinking we should catch up. Maybe I could come by your house sometime. I miss Calder. I'd like to see him." "Absolutely not. Hell no. That's what I want to say." "So say it. It's not difficult. Just say no." You know she knows what she's doing. She's crossing boundaries. She's attempting to seduce you. At this point, you don't owe her anything. You are broken up. It's not appropriate for her to be doing these things. Just say that. Set the boundaries now. Some people might disagree with me, but I'm sorry, you don't have to be polite to someone who is trying to make you cheat on your partner. Just say no and move away. "Vaughn, I don't think that's a good idea," is what I actually say. "Oh," she says quietly, "okay." I can tell I've just offended her by the way she lowers her tone. "Look, I'm not trying to be rude. It's just, we have a lot of history. It wouldn't be fair to Lake." She cocks her head at me. "Lake? Your girlfriend's name is Lake." I don't like her demeanour. "Her name is Laken. I call her Lake." She turns towards me in her seat and puts her hand on my arm. "Will, I'm not trying to cause trouble. If Laken's the jealous type, just say so. It's not a big deal." She grazes her thumb across my arm, and I look down at her hand. I hate how she's trying to undermine my relationship with her snide comment. She always used to do this. She hasn't changed at all. I pull my arm away from her and face the front of the room. "Vaughn, stop. I know what you're doing and it's not going to happen." She huffs and focuses her attention back to the front of the room. She's pissed. Good. Maybe she got the not so subtle hint. Okay, so this is the point where you now stand up and move seats to reinforce your point. And then you get home and you tell Laken all of this. You know what she's doing. You know what Vaughn is doing, and to hide it from Laken at this point makes you complicit in it. Sorry, but it's true. Of course he doesn't tell Laken, because he's pathetic. Friday is apparently fine because Vaughn doesn't even show up to class, and that's the day of Kel's birthday. There's more stupid butterfly jokes, as Kel's birthday cake says, "Happy butterflying birthday, Kel." I'm embarrassed to be even reading this book. There's more child abuse jokes about how they need to stop beating them now before it's too late, and how Laken will get the first punch. Again, I don't find it funny. I'm sorry, but I don't think child abuse is a funny punchline. Nothing happens at the party, but after Will is like, I'm counting down the days until I can stick my penis in you, Lakin. I may be paraphrasing. We are a quarter of the way into the book at this point, and still, nothing has happened. I'm bored. Will and Lakin almost have sex, but they don't because plot, and honestly, I do not care. It's really weird to see two characters who are at this point supposed to be adults. If we take the whole teacher and grooming thing out of this, they're supposed to be adults acting so juvenile when it comes to sex. It's just a very weird attitude. Not necessarily like the wanting to wait thing. That's, people can wait as long as they want or have sex or not as much as they want. It's just their whole attitude around it is very childlike. It's weird. It's very weird. Then Will is like, Lakin, I want your first time to be my idea of special, so how dare you tempt me with your womanly ways? You need to stop wanting sex so that I don't accidentally have sex with you before I say that you're ready. Again, I may be paraphrasing, you can read this stuff for yourself, but it's all weird and shamey and very pushing purity culture and virginity worshipping and man controlling, woman shaming, all that nonsense. I don't like it. Chapter 5. This opens with another word vomit. I mean poem. I love being with you so bad. When we aren't together, I miss you so bad. One of these days, I'm gonna marry you so bad. And it'll be so, so good. I really wish I'd never read this. So bad. Will's in his class again. Now I'm sitting here in death and dying, being stared down by the only person I've ever had sex with. It's awkward. The way Vaughn is acting, I feel like I'm really hiding something from Lake. You are. But telling her about Vaughn now would just prove that I wasn't being completely honest the first week of school. Yeah, which is why you shouldn't lie at all, idiot. The last thing I want to do before this weekend is upset Lake, so I decide to wait another week before I bring it up. I'm sorry, but even as a 23-year-old man and a groomer, you are too immature to be sleeping with anybody if this is your attitude. If you're acting like this with your ex, and you're lying to your current girlfriend so it doesn't ruin your chances of having sex with her, you are too immature to be having sex with any of them, and it is gross. Also, I'm sorry, but when it comes to Laken, this is manipulation. And this is coercion. You are literally hiding something from her so you can increase your chances of having sex with her. You are not allowing her access to all the information for her to be able to give informed consent, and that is not okay. You know that if you told her, she wouldn't want to sleep with you. Therefore, by hiding it, you are coercing her into having sex with you. That's not okay. Vaughn, the professor's up there, I say, pointing to the front of the room. She continues to stare at me. Will, you're being a snob, she whispers. I don't understand why you won't just talk to me. If you were really over what happened between us, it wouldn't bother you this much. Yeah, he's not being a snob. He's trying to set boundaries and you're being disrespectful. Stop it. I really, really hate the whole X turns up and ruins everything trope in fiction and real life. Can't deal with it. I'm over as Vaughn. It's been 3 years. You're over as too. You just always want what you can't have and it's pissing you off. It's got nothing to do with me. She folds her arms across her chest and sits back in her chair. You think I want you? She glares at me, then turns her attention to the front of the room. Has anyone ever told you you're an asshole? She whispers. I laugh. As a matter of fact, yes, more than once. Yeah, you both are, and I hope you both end up alone. That scene ends, and Kel and Calder are back at school now. Also, a random aside here, but what I find weird about this book is Colleen has clearly written this sequel for adults, right? Her first book in this series, Slammed, was very clearly marketed as young adult. It's plastered everywhere on Goodreads and Amazon, whatever, young adult. But this book is far more adult in its content. We have far more swearing. We have more graphic sex scenes. It's clear she's writing for a more adult audience. But I don't like this shift midway through a series without any proper warnings or anything like that. Like, I don't feel comfortable with the idea that the teens who read her first book, despite it being a toxic bad influence, then picking up the sequel expecting more of the same and instead getting erotica. You know what I mean? It just it seems an irresponsible move. The sex in this book isn't as explicit as, say, like the sex in Verity or stuff like that, but it's still more than I think is appropriate for a teenage audience, you know? So I feel like this is irresponsible of Colleen, but then again, when has Colleen Hoover ever actually given a damn about her audience and their well-being? She's not going to start now, is she? That night at dinner, Will is in a foul mood because of Vaughn. Gavin questions his parenting skills, and Will gets defensive, and it turns out that everyone is in a bad mood. Laken has a cry because it is the anniversary of her dead dad and dead mum's wedding anniversary. I said anniversary in there twice. Yeah, so she's sad about that, but again, nothing really comes of it. There wasn't really any point to this, so yeah, okay. Eddie and Gavin are super grumps too. We don't find out why, but we will very soon, don't worry. The scene ends. It was pointless. On Wednesday, Will continues his lies and borderline emotional cheating. For reasons beyond my comprehension, Vaughn sits next to me again on Wednesday. You would think after our little tiff on Monday that she would have given up by now. I was hoping she had anyway. Yeah, she's trying to mess with you. Just get up and move seats. If you don't want to sit next to her, don't sit next to her. It's as simple as that. It's not hard. You are literally allowing her to keep pushing your boundaries. You're allowing this. Not to victim blame, but I keep saying boundaries. He's not actually setting boundaries. He's just frustrating. She pulls out her notebook and opens her textbook where we left off Monday. She doesn't stare at me this time. In fact, she doesn't even speak during the entire class period. I'm happy she's not talking to me, but at the same time, I feel a little guilty for being so rude to her. Not guilty enough to apologise about it, though. She did deserve it. You weren't rude. This is exactly what she wants. Stop it. As I'm packing our things up, still not speaking, she slides something across the table to me, then walks out. I debate throwing the note in the trash without reading it, but my curiosity gets the better of me. I wait until I'm seated in my next class to open it. Will, you may not want to hear this, but I need to say it. I'm really sorry. Breaking up with you is one of my biggest regrets in life so far. Especially breaking up with you when I did. It wasn't fair to you. I realise that now, but I was young and I was scared. You can't act like what we had between us was nothing. I loved you, and I know you loved me. You at least owe me the courtesy of talking to me. I just want the chance to apologise to you in person. I can't seem to let go of how things ended between us. Let me apologise. Vaughn. I fold the note up and put it in my pocket, then lay my head down on the desk and sigh. She's not going to let it go. I don't want to think about it right now, so I don't. I'll worry about it later. Sorry, but he doesn't owe her anything. They broke up. She dumped him. He doesn't owe her conversation. He doesn't owe her his time. Nothing. They broke up. He moved on. She needs to get over that. Simple as that. But by keeping this note, he's not respecting the boundaries in his relationship with Laken. He needs to shut this down, and if he doesn't, it's betraying Lake. By keeping the note and not telling her about it, he's betraying Laken. Simple as that. I wrote in my original script here, clearly she'll find the note, it'll all blow up, and honestly I don't care. I hope they break up. Again, I was giving Colleen Hoover too much credit. This note never comes back up again. It's not actually important. The next night everyone goes to a slam poetry event where Will is performing and oh, God's sake. I don't know if I can sit through another one of these scenes. God's sake. Can someone please make them stop? Oh, I do not get paid enough for this. However, before Will's poem, there is another poet performing. He performs a poem on a topic Colleen Hoover knows a lot about. It's called Write Poorly. Oh, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll give you some highlights. Write poorly. Suck. Write awful. Terribly. Frightfully. Don't care. Turn off the inner editor. Let yourself write. Let it flow. Let yourself fail. Literally Colleen Hoover writing all these books and then forgetting to edit before she hits publish. Blah, blah, blah. Let's skip forward a bit. Writing is like anything else. You don't get good at it immediately. It's a craft you have to keep getting better. You don't get to Juilliard unless you practice. If you want to get to Carnegie Hall, practice, practice, practice. Or give them a lot of money. Which is crazy because look at how many books Colleen Hoover has written at this point, and yet she never gets better, does she? I guess practice doesn't work for everyone. The poem ends with, so keep at it. Make it a practice. And write poorly. Write awfully. Write with abandon. And it may end up being really, really good. Sadly, this still eludes Colleen. And then, sickeningly, Will gets up in front of his little brother and his groomed girlfriend's little brother, who are children, to perform a poem about having sex with Laken in front of all their family and friends, including minors. It feels wrong. He calls his poem Point of Retreat. I hate this. But if I had to sit through this, so do you. 22 hours, and our war begins. Our war of limbs, and lips, and hands. The point of retreat is no longer a factor when both sides of the line agree to surrender. I can't tell you how many times I've lost, or how many times we've won. The game we've been playing for 59 weeks, I'd say the score is none to none. 22 hours and our war begins. Our war of limbs and lips and hands. The best part of finally not calling retreat. The showers above us raining down on our feet. While the bombs are exploding and the guns fire their rounds. Before the two of us collapse to the ground. Before the battle. Before the war. You need to know. I'd go 59 more. Whatever it takes to let you win. I'd retreat all over. And all over. And over. Again. If you would like a small break to go and vomit now, that's absolutely fine. Pause the video here. I will be here waiting when you get back from clearing your stomach. Don't worry, guys. I understand. I really kind of want to analyze these poems, but really there's so little to say and they're so uninteresting. It's just like, what is there? When they get home from the slam poetry night, Will tells Laken that he has booked 2 nights for them in a hotel in Detroit, and we get the revelation that Will's grandmother hates Laken, which could be really, really interesting, and I would be quite interested in reading that book and how you deal with it, because, you know, I've personally had to deal with an insane mother-in-law before who, you know, it was, let's just say, emotional incest. It was not healthy. And it was a struggle as his partner to deal with that. So I feel like maybe if that was explored in a book, it would be really interesting, but no. It turns out it's just because the first time they met, Laken was a bit OTT with the PDA, and his grandmother didn't like that. Laken says, Will, we were all over each other. After your graduation, when we all went out to eat, you could barely talk. You were kissing me so much. It was making your grandmother really uncomfortable. When she asked you how long we'd been dating, you told her 18 hours. How do you think that made me look? Lake hits me on the arm. She thinks I'm a slut, Will. It's embarrassing. I touch my lips against her ear again. Not yet, you're not, I tease. So, in the end, it all just comes down to slut-shaming. It's boring and a shame, and I hate it. Will then tries to be flirty with Laken, but he's just aggressive again, because apparently she likes it when I try to intimidate her. Look, I get the whole dom-sub thing. There's nothing wrong with that. No one is shaming that, but that's not what's happening here. There's no conversations about it, there's no real consent, there's no safe words. Will has literally just been aggressive and violent and abused his position of power to control her in the past. So when his attempts at flirting are just him intimidating her and trapping her in rooms and stuff like that, it's not sexy and fun, it's just terrifying. In the next chapter, we get Will's journal entry, and how the hell is this supposed to be written by a 23-year-old man? I'll just say what's on my mind, okay? Sex. Sex, sex, sex. I'm having sex tonight. Making love. Butterflying. Whatever you want to call it, we'll be doing it. And I can't freaking wait. Well, at least I understand why he pursued a child now. Because he's one as well. This is so gross. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I sent this to Elise and Vangelina Scarf in our group chat, and I was like, if I've had to read this, you have to too. I'm a good friend. Also, and again, I was talking to Elise about this, does it bother anyone else how in both this book and pretty much all of Colleen Hoover's books actually, the portrayal of sex is so all or nothing? It's really bizarre. Like, they've been allowing themselves to do nothing but kiss for an entire year and a bit now, and now they're going straight into penetrative sex all in one go. Like, you know there are in-betweens, right? There are other things you can do. There are ways to get to know each other's bodies and get comfortable with each other over time. You can just spend time undressing each other, touching each other. There's oral sex. There's, for want of a better word, hand stuff. There's ways you can build up to penetrative sex without having penetrative sex if you're not ready for that or don't want that. You can build physical intimacy without penetrative sex. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's very odd. The grandparents turn up at Will's house, and the grandmother gives a lecture to Will, which is, it's not appropriate with the two of you just running off for the weekend like this. You aren't even engaged yet, much less married. I just think you two rushed into things so quickly, it makes me nervous. They've been together over a year. I wouldn't call that rushing, and it's no one's business if they have sex or not. It's a normal, healthy part of many relationships. All the grooming aside, that complicates things. But let's just imagine this was any other two adults. It would be no one else's business. This book gives me so many conflicting thoughts. Weirdly, as Will is packing for his weekend away with Laken, completely inappropriately, Vaughn just shows up uninvited at his house. This is not okay, and also a massive cliche, but mostly, yeah, not okay. Will decides the best way to deal with her is not asking her to leave his home, but to get her alone in his bedroom to talk. He's an idiot. This is entirely inappropriate. If my partner, Kieran doesn't really have an ex, but let's say someone he's been involved in the past just turned up unannounced at his home, I wouldn't expect him to be like, oh yeah, just come into my bedroom. That's so inappropriate. You don't say that. You say, hey, it's not appropriate for you to be here, please leave. And if they don't leave, you call the police. Simple. But instead, while in Will's bedroom alone with him, this 22 or 23-year-old woman, however old Vaughn is supposed to be, starts acting like a petulant child for some reason. I guess because Colleen Hoover doesn't know how to write any other kind of character. She folds her arms across her chest and shakes her head. I'm not leaving until you talk to me. All you've done is avoid me. Why is she so hung up on a groomer? He's not that great. Move on. Get a life of your own. Find someone decent who isn't a predator. She starts crying and says, Will, I miss you. I miss Calder. Since I saw you the first day of class, I've done nothing but think about you and how we ended things. I was wrong. Please just hear me out. At which point he should say, not my problem, please go. But instead, like the cheating idiot he is, he says, fine, talk, make it quick. I know you have a girlfriend, but I also know you haven't been dating her nearly as long as you and I dated. That really doesn't mean anything. I know about her parents and that she's raising her brother. People talk, Will. What's your point, I say. I think maybe you're with her for all the wrong reasons. Maybe you just feel sorry for her since she's going through what you went through with your family. It's not fair to her if that's why you're with her. I think you owe it to her to give you and I another shot to see where your heart really is. That's ridiculous, right? Yeah, don't insert yourself into other people's relationships. Oh, God. I hate Laken and Will as much, as a couple, as much as anyone, right? Because grooming. But this is not appropriate and it's rude. Also, again, I have to ask, what the hell do these women see in him? The only appropriate response to this from Will should be, not gonna happen, get out my house. But he's an idiot. Instead, he's like, Vaughn, listen, you're right. I did love you. Did being the key word here. I'm in love with Lake. I would never do anything to hurt her. And you being here, it would hurt her. So why'd you invite her in? Clearly he doesn't care. That's why I want you to leave. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but you made your choice, and I've moved on from that choice. Now you need to move on too. Please, do us both a favour and just go. I stand up and walk to the bedroom door and wait for her to do the same. She stands up, but rather than follow me to the door, she starts to cry again. I roll my head and walk over to her. Vaughn, stop. Stop crying. I'm sorry, I say, putting my arms around her. Maybe I've been too hard on her. I know it took a lot for her to come here and apologise. If she really does still love me, I shouldn't be acting like such a jerk. Oh, stop it. You know what she's doing, and she's crossing your boundaries. She's disrespecting your relationship. You don't owe her anything. And right now, by being like, oh, I feel sorry for her, here, let me hug you alone in my bedroom, and meh, you're doing exactly what she wants, and you are betraying Laken. Simple as that. I wrote in my script here, you're in your bedroom cuddling up to a woman who's still in love with you who isn't your girlfriend. That's not appropriate at all. And let me guess, Laken's going to walk in and see them together and get absolutely the right idea, but Will tell us she's misunderstood. Again, I could write Colleen Hoover books, they are so predictable. I brush the hair away from her face and wipe the tears from her cheeks. She smiles and hugs me goodbye. I give her a quick peck on the forehead when we separate, and I turn to the door. And that's when it happens. My whole world comes crashing down around me. She's standing in the doorway watching us, her mouth open like she's about to say something, but can't. Calder rushes past her when he sees Vaughn standing beside me. Vaughn, he says excitedly as he rushes to her and hugs her. Lake looks into my eyes and I see it. I see her heart breaking. Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's a massive cliche, but she should be upset about this. She should be angry. I'm on her side here, completely. There's another physical altercation between Will and Laken, not as violent as the first book, and this is more about Lake being violent. Either way, it screams toxic to me. I understand her anger, but I don't condone her being violent towards him as a response at all. She's crying. I try to pull her to me, but she fights me. She shoves me back and starts hitting me in the chest without saying a word. She just keeps hitting me. I grab her hands and pull them to me, but she continues to try and fight me. I keep holding her until she grows weaker in my arms and starts to fall to the ground. Rather than hold her up, I melt to the snow-covered street with her and hold her as she cries. Lake, it's nothing. I swear, it's nothing. I saw you, Will. I saw you hugging her. It wasn't nothing, she cries. You kissed her on the forehead. Why would you do that? She continues to cry. She isn't trying to hold back the tears this time. And that's true. The whole forehead kisses were a thing in their first book. So all of it together, it's like a massive betrayal and crossing of boundaries. And the fact he's now been lying to her for weeks, I'm sorry, but there's no explanation that makes any of this okay. I don't condone Lincoln's violence, but I thoroughly understand her upset here, and I just think she should dump him and move on. That's the happy ending this book needs. Simple. This is the kind of betrayal that you don't come back from. I wouldn't forgive it. Vaughn appears and is like, Will, I'm really sorry, Vaughn says from behind me. Really, I didn't mean to cause problems. Yes, you did. You literally came here to try and break them up. Get out of here. Ugh. Colleen Hoover does not know how to write any likeable characters, does she? Not one. Laken refuses to talk to him until she appears in the middle of the night in his house to grab a star from the vase that her mum gave them and then just leaves. He follows her out into the street and is like, oh, well, no, she's like, how are you going to explain it? She says. Her cheeks are streaked with mascara. She's heartbroken and it's all my fault. Yeah. The one girl you've had sex with has been sitting in class with you every day for over 2 weeks. Why haven't you explained that? And the very night I'm about to leave with you to make love to you, I find you in your bedroom with her and you're kissing her on the freaking forehead. Yeah, she makes a good point. There's no explanation for that makes it okay. Will slams his front door over and over and over again because who cares about his neighbours who are sleeping in the middle of the night, right? Will grabs a star from the jar and finds the quote, sometimes two people have to fall apart to realise how much they need to fall back together, which he then strategically folds back up and puts back in the jar right at the top so he can try and manipulate Laken into taking it to try and get her to take him back. So instead of actually doing anything to fix his mess and his lies or letting her go and like you probably should at this point, he's just like, I'll use her dead mum's gift to try and guilt her into taking me back. Ha ha ha. He's scum and I hate him. The chapter ends and the next one starts with a journal entry with the simple entry FML. Great. I'm so glad these journals are here. They really add to the story and aren't at all just page filler, right? We're about to move on to chapter 7, but it's currently 10:30 at night and I am very tired and I think I need a break. So, I'm going to do that. I'll come back and hopefully film tomorrow and I'll see you then. Be no time for you, but time will have passed for me, so thanks guys. See you soon. Alright, hi everyone. Okay, next day, let's just jump back into this. We are starting chapter 7 now. You know, I was gonna skip this bit originally when I wrote my original script, but after seeing how much you guys loved the gnomes in the premiere of the last video I did, I just had to include this because of course we need justice for the gnomes. So here is what they're up to in this book. I'm going to warn you though, you are not going to like this. This is just one more thing to hate Colleen Hoover for. I'm so used to seeing the gnomes line the driveway next to her car. They aren't there anymore though. After her mother died, Lake gathered all the gnomes and threw them in the trash. She doesn't know it, but I dug one out and kept it. The one with the broken red hat. No, shocking. First there's gnomicide, then she disposes of all the bodies. Terrible. Will then continues to be entirely inappropriate with children as he tries to get Kirsten, the 11-year-old girl, I'm going to remind you, to spy on Laken and report back to him. Hello. Because there's nothing like getting children involved in your relationship, right? That's healthy. Kirsten agrees at first, but then she goes over and speaks to Laken and finds out what Will did, and he's like, yeah, I'm not speaking to you anymore, which is understandable. It turns out that Laken is having another one of her breakdowns and is rearranging her entire house, just like she did to Will's in the first book, but hopefully this doesn't end in the same way with Will assaulting her and locking her in the bathroom. Thankfully it doesn't. Will then goes back to the 11-year-old girl and manipulates her into getting her to help him trick Laken into opening her front door so he can then force his way in. That's a lot of words. Yeah, that makes sense, right? I don't really have a plan of attack. I'm hiding against the wall in front of Lake's house when Kirsten knocks. My heart is beating so fast, I feel like I'm about to commit a robbery or something. I take a deep breath when I hear the door open. Kirsten steps aside and I brush past her and slip inside Lake's house faster than she can realise what happened. Get out, Will, she says as she holds the door open and points outside. I'm not leaving until you talk to me, I say. I back further into the living room. Get out, get out, get out, get out! I do what any sane male would do in this situation. I run down the hallway and lock myself in her bedroom. I realise I still don't have a plan. I don't know how I can talk to her if I'm locked in her bedroom, but at least she can't kick me out of her house now. I'll stay here all day if I have to. Does anyone else want Laken to call the police at this point, or is it just me? I see the shadow of her feet reappear and she pauses in front of her bedroom door again. Will, open the door. I'll talk to you. She doesn't sound angry. My idiotic plan worked. I unlock the door to her bedroom, and as soon as I open it all the way, I'm completely drenched in water. She just threw water on me. She threw an entire pitcher of water in my face. Oh, she says, you look a little wet, Will. You better go home and change before you get sick. She calmly turns and walks away. They're literally children, aren't they? Like, this is all played for, like, comedy. Like, him being like, oh, what any sane male would do, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to lock myself in a room. I'm going to lock her in a room. We're going to throw water over each other. It's all played for, like, comedy and jokes, but it's not funny. Because if this happened in real life, it's just toxic as hell. Like, I've dated people who have driven me to this point of, like, craziness where I've wanted to hurt myself and I've been sad and crying and an absolute mess and I tried to run away and stuff, and it's not healthy. You just need to get away from people who make you act like that. It's the only way. I don't find this funny or cute or like, ha ha ha, look, they're just so passionate about each other. No, it's unhealthy and you need to get away from it. If people make you feel and act like this, get them out of your life. That is all. You know, I said in the first video that Will and Laken wouldn't have had any of the problems they'd had if they just communicated like adults in the first place, and it's exactly the same here. If Will had just told her about Vaughn when he first bumped into her, and told her that Vaughn was being inappropriate with him and stuff, none of this would have happened. If they'd just spoken like adults, they could get some closure and move on. I hate this. I hate these characters. I do. I hate them. What do you think? What do you think? Yeah. Would you like to address the audience? Would you like to say anything? She won't even look at the screen with Colleen Hoover's book on it. So dramatic. But I don't blame you. I don't blame you. He then complains that Laken didn't even warm the water before throwing it at him, which is ridiculous considering that in the first book he physically forced her under a freezing cold shower and like put it on in her face after also throwing water over it. It's just ridiculous. He then goes home to feel sorry for himself some more. I hate this book. Sherry comes over and gives Will some homemade pills, which he takes and passes out. This is crazy, right? This is never brought up again. This is never addressed. Sherry just makes these like homemade medicines and tablets and stuff that will knock people out. And it's just like, no, is this even legal? Please, if a random woman offers you homemade pills, especially without telling you what's in them, please do not take them. Just no. When he finally wakes up, Laken comes over and tries to take the vase that her mum left for them, but then Will is like super selfish, and he's like, she's not taking this vase with her. If she takes the vase with her, she won't have any reason to come back. I grab the vase out of her hands, but she won't let go. We tug back and forth, but I'm not letting go. I'm not letting her take it. She finally releases her grasp and crosses her arms across her chest as she glares at me. Give it to me, Will. My mother made it and I want to take it home with me. I walk back into the kitchen with the vase. She follows me. I set it in the corner of the countertop against the wall, and I turn around and place my arms on either side of it so she can't reach it. Like, there is nothing likeable about this man, is there? How has he got two women, like, lusting after him? It makes no sense. Biggest plot hole ever. Also, again, I wrote in this point in the script, Colleen literally only knows how to write one character, doesn't she? The voice between Laken in the first book and Will in this book are indistinguishable. I said it in the beginning of this video, and I'm saying it again. It's ridiculous. Will then starts shaming Laken for not talking to him for 24 whole hours, even though he thoroughly deserves it, right? He's acting like she's the only one who's done anything wrong here. It's like, sorry, Mr. Cheater, but no. Laken literally stomps her feet like a child, and Will is like, ugh, she looks so beautiful. Can we just not? And he then tries to talk his way out of his lies again. Lake, I don't feel that way about Vaughn anymore. I was planning on telling you about her being in my class next week. I just didn't want to bring it up before our getaway. Oh, so you wanted to make sure you got laid before you pissed me off? Good plan, she says sarcastically. I sat my forehead with my hand and closed my eyes. There isn't a fight this girl couldn't win. Or maybe it's just because she's right? That's exactly what you were doing, and you were trying to manipulate her into sex by withholding information that you knew would bother her. It's not that, oh, she's just too good at arguments. It's that you're a poopy head, and she is right. Really hard not to call him worse names at this point. He doesn't listen to her, though, and she tries to leave, and he physically restrains her again. He basically, like, grabs onto her and pulls her back to the settee with him, and then he tries to tell her that he just kissed Vaughn on the forehead out of habit. Like that makes anything better. Come on. If it's such an automatic habit to you to just, oh, I can't help it when I'm around her, I just slip and kiss her. It's natural, it's automatic, it happens all the time. It does around you. But if it's so automatic to you, then don't be around that person. It's that simple. If you can't help automatically kissing someone when you're in a monogamous relationship with someone else, don't be around that person. It's not complicated, it's not difficult, just don't do it. Somehow, in all of this though, for no logical reason other than Colleen Hoover wanted to write a smutty scene, they just start kissing in the middle of this argument, this physically violent argument, and she's like, I want you to make love to me, Will, and then I'm vomit everywhere, and then Will is like, Lake, I can't, not like this. And then, like, in my script I wrote, like a proper little incel, Laken says. I may have been a bit harsh at that point, but we'll discuss this in a second. But Laken says, you've had sex with her, Will. How do I get past that? How do I get past the fact you've made love to Vaughn, but you won't make love to me? You don't know how it feels to be rejected. It feels like shit. You just made me feel like shit. This is a bit of a complicated topic because like on the one hand this is why you shouldn't compare yourself to past partners, but on the other hand that's really hard to do when the past partner is there in front of you, currently in your partner's life. Do you know what I mean? Like, what happened before, and just because things happened one way with one person, that doesn't mean they have to happen the same way with other people, right? Just because he did one thing with one person doesn't mean he has to do it with another, and that goes for everyone else, you know? Just because you had one timeline with one partner doesn't mean you need to stick to the same timeline with other partners, and so on. You know, different relationships need you to do different things, or you want to do things differently, and you know, there's never any good reason to say, well, you did one thing with them, so you need to do it with me. You know, that's not fair, not at all. That's completely inappropriate. However, I do understand why the situation has made her insecure and why it's being expressed in this way. It's not healthy, but I understand it, if that makes sense. Like, I've been in a similar kind of situation to hers before, but I guess worse. Because, like, I remember when Johnny was cheating on me, like, a lot, and I found he was keeping, I'm not exaggerating here, literally tens of thousands of photos of him having sex with other people on a hard drive. He kept it all, and I saw it all. And there's nothing like seeing your boyfriend's penis inserted inside another woman over and over and over again to make you compare yourself to them, you know? When you have seen every inch of their body, from their labia and bumhole to the backs of their ears, you compare yourself. Like, you can't help it. It's like when that ex is still in their life and they're not letting go of them, and then you're seeing all this stuff and it's just everywhere constantly, and they refuse to get rid of it, and it's just there, and it's popping up online, and you're seeing it. It's impossible to not compare yourself, you know? It made me paranoid and crazy. And the fact that, like, a lot of the times as well, he was lying about this stuff. So he'd be like, yeah, there's no photos, there's none of them, I got rid of everything. And then you stumble across literally like about 10,000 of them, and you're like, oh, so that was a lie. It makes them even more, like, meaningful in a way, because you're like, well, he went to all this effort to hide them and lie about them, so they clearly mean something. And then you make more and more comparisons. And yeah, my point is, I get where Laken's coming from with this. I understand where her insecurity stems from and why she's saying this. I just also recognise, having been there in the past myself, it's not healthy at all. And honestly, the only way to really, like, get over this is to cut out the person who is making you feel like that, and then go and build your self-esteem back up by yourself, because you know that you deserve better, and you need to remember that you deserve better than that, you know? Like, and for me, the solution was to go and find a partner I could trust and work on building back up to being able to trust people, you know? Because there's only so much work you can do by yourself, you know? Like, you can't learn to trust people by yourself. You need to actually put trust in someone to learn how to trust again. Does that make sense? So you need someone trustworthy to help you through it. I don't know if this is making sense. I hope so. But like I had a really, really rough time these last few years with, like, because even though things were great with Dan in the middle of our relationship, the beginning was so difficult with him lying to me about women and exes, and like he would like meet up with his ex behind my back, or he changed her name in his phone to a different name so that if I was borrowing his laptop when a message popped up, I wouldn't know it's from her. And it was full of lies like that, and it really, really messed me up for a while. And then after him, like, I think, well, there were a few other bad patches, but then Johnny was the worst for constantly keeping other women on the hook and, like, juggling a number of us at the same time. And then after him, there was James, and James, it turns out, lied to me about not being involved with anyone, but then it turns out he actually slept with, like, every one of his female friends except one of them, and he was prioritizing their feelings over my own, and being like, oh, well, you know, so-and-so and so-and-so that I slept with are going to be at this party, so you can't come because it might upset them. And I'm like, you know, and then he was still following his sex worker ex's sex work social media accounts, so he's still seeing her post naked photos of herself every single day. And I'm like, this is not okay. This is your ex. And it was just like Johnny again, because, like, again, when it's in your face like that, and you know that, like, they're basically in a position to be comparing you, you compare yourself as well. And it drove me absolutely crazy. And I completely lost it, and I was a mess. And I really wanted to, well, I did hurt myself really badly during that time. And it was just a nightmare. It made me feel so completely worthless and not good enough. And it didn't help that he told me it was all my fault. It wasn't, you know, he wasn't accepting any responsibility for the lying and the, you know, not having boundaries with exes and all of that stuff. He just told me that I was crazy, I was insecure, this was a me problem, you need to go to therapy and sort this, blah blah blah, this is all you. Same as Johnny did. And I was like, oh crap, you know, this keeps happening with men. I must be crazy. I must be completely insecure. I must have something wrong with me. So I really, really did think I was the problem, and I was like, I'm the worst person in the world. I'm broken. I'm damaged. I'm an absolute wreck. And I started seeing my therapist, and I'm like, look, can you just please help me figure out how to fix myself, essentially. And I told her everything that had happened with like James and Johnny and everyone. And her response was like, okay, so these two men sound like narcissists. And while your response isn't healthy for you, it's a normal response to what they did. And I was like, wait, what? And she basically helped me realize that even though my responses weren't healthy for me, they weren't my fault as such. They were essentially caused by the men in my life, if that makes sense. Like, so she helped me find coping mechanisms for when I'm feeling like that, but the biggest thing she did was help me figure out how to build up my own self-esteem and self-worth and set boundaries so that I stopped accepting men treating me like that, you know? She helped me realize that it wasn't that I'm crazy and that I'm insecure and broken. It's that I was surrounding myself with bad people who made me feel bad. It wasn't that I was broken, it was that I was being hurt by bad people constantly. And she kind of helped me realize there's a distinction there, and she helped me set some really, really important like boundaries. And that's why now I have this like zero tolerance policy when it comes to honesty and that sort of thing in relationships. And that's why it was so helpful to be still seeing her while I was like dating and stuff, because like I went on like 2 dates with someone before I met Kieran and really, really liked him. I thought he was wonderful and smart and kind and talented, and I really enjoyed spending time with him, but also he couldn't stop talking about his ex. And I was just like, yeah, like speaking to my therapist about this, I was like, I can't do this. And she was like, yeah, I think you deserve better. And then I met Kieran, and again I spoke through every step of our relationship with my therapist, and it was just a whole different experience. And it proved to me that like it's not about having an issue with people's past, it's about how people treat me in the present and what boundaries they have in their lives in the present. So like comparing say like Kieran and James, Kieran's been with like far more people than James ever had, but the difference is they're not in Kieran's life anymore. He's set up very strong boundaries, he's never lied to me about them, he's never given me any reason to worry about them, he's never prioritized any of them before me. He has boundaries with them where he's like, well, no, I have a girlfriend now, so you're not in my life, essentially. And like, he's never once made me feel jealous, he's never once compared any of us or given me any reason to compare any of us. And it's just, he's been very, very honest about absolutely everything, and he's never once made me feel like I was crazy or insecure or jealous. And it's just very, very refreshing, you know? So I think the reason I'm saying all of this, and the reason I'm kind of exploring all this, because this is as much for me wrapping my head around this stuff as you guys. To summarise, I guess what I mean is I do thoroughly understand where Laken's coming from in this, and I would say with an average relationship, it's not healthy or useful or normal to be comparing yourself to your partner's past partners. Yeah, that does make sense. And normally I would say the fault lies with the person making those comparisons. But in the case where the partner is literally rubbing their exes in their current partner's face, where the exes are still around, where they're not drawing boundaries with their exes, where the ex is overstepping, like in this case where the ex was literally in his bedroom and he kissed her in the same way the forehead kisses that are like really special to him and Laken. He kissed her in their special way, and you know, she's there confessing her love to him, and he knows this has been going on for weeks and he hasn't said, like, all of that. Basically what I'm saying is the fault is with Will, in my mind. And while Laken's comparisons here still aren't healthy for her, or anyone really, I don't blame her for them, and I think the way to get over this and get better is just dump Will and move on, because he's a piece of crap. Right, okay. I don't know if any of that made sense. There was a lot of rambling going on there. Point is, complicated, and I know my own personal biases might be showing here, but I can kind of put myself in Laken's position here. I've been through what she's been through, and I don't think she should be asking him to sleep with her, but I get why she is, because she kind of feels sort of almost like possessive and jealous and like, oh, like maybe if I do this and, you know, we have this, he'll choose me over her, and it's a desperation thing, I get it. I don't think he should sleep with her because he would be taking advantage of her being in a vulnerable situation from the hurt he's caused. But I understand her logic here, even if it's not healthy. Right, okay. So then, thankfully, Will doesn't sleep with her. Laken breaks up with him, and at this point I was internally cheering. I was like, oh, thank God, good for her.
Good for her.
Can we please just pretend the book ends here and we get our happy ending, please? Yeah? That's it. Fade to black, end of video, done. No, sadly not. Will's response is, once again, violence. It is a pattern at this point. This man is an abusive piece of crap as well as a groomer, and I can't cope with it. After an hour of punching everything I can find to punch, cleaning everything I can find to clean, and screaming every cuss word I can think to scream, I knock on Sherry's door. When she opens it, she looks at me and doesn't say a word. She turns back inside and comes back a moment later and holds out her fist. I open my palm and she drops the pills in my hand and looks at me with pity. I hate pity. When I'm back inside my house, I swallow the pills and lay on the couch, wishing it all away. So violence and the start of some sort of substance abuse issue, which is never addressed again. And throughout all this, he doesn't even know what he's taking. He's just taking these pills to pass out. That's not healthy. When he finally wakes up from his pill, sleep, whatever, Will says that he's discombobulated, which means that was definitely the word of the day on Colleen Hoover's dictionary app, wasn't it? Gavin, the ex-student/friend, comes around to check on Will, and Will decides he needs a shot of tequila, which is interesting because this is actually the first time we've ever seen him drink alcohol in either of these books, and it's only there as an unhealthy coping mechanism in the middle of the day. Not sure how I feel about that. Will continues to down tequila before Gavin drops the bomb that his girlfriend, Laken's best friend, and 19-year-old college student, actually she might still be 18 at this point, I'm not sure, she's pregnant. Yeah, she's pregnant. Because Colleen Hoover simply cannot leave a womb empty, can she? Other than Laken, every single woman in this book, or these two books at this point, has been or is pregnant. Even 11-year-old Kirsten, they've discussed her getting pregnant in the future. I said about Laken and her being the only one not pregnant. I'm like, there's still time though. What we betting she gets pregnant her first time with him? I hope to God that doesn't happen in the third book. So the chapter ends and Will writes in his journal, Lake, 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 lake. I'd take a mountain and then I need another drink. But I love you so much. Yeah, I think I need more tequila and more cowbell. I love you, I'm sorry. I'm not thirsty. I'm not hungry, just thirsty. But I'm never drinking another cheeseburger again. I love you so much. I can't deal with this. Oh, Colleen, why do you do this to us? Will wakes up the next morning and a man called Reese is in his bathroom. I mean, we've all been there, right? Apparently, this is an old friend of his from school that he's now letting him stay with him, although he has no memory of agreeing to that, and we've never heard of this man before, not even once. Laken comes back to get the vase again, and we get this incredibly uncomfortable and unnecessary scene that really, really bothers me. I grab the vase from her hands. She jerks it away harder than I expect, and the vase slips and lands on the floor, spilling out dozens of tiny stars onto the carpet. She bends down and starts scooping them up. Her hands are full and I can see on her face that she doesn't know where to put them since her pants don't have pockets. She pulls the collar of her shirt out and starts shoving them inside by the handfuls. She's determined. I grab her hands and pull them away from her shirt. Lake, stop it, you're acting like a 10-year-old. I set the vase upright and start throwing the rest of them inside as fast as she's grabbing them, stuffing them inside her shirt. I do the only thing I can. I reach my hand down her shirt and start grabbing them back. She slaps at my hand and tries to crawl backwards, but I grab the back of her shirt to stop her. She continues to back away as I continue holding onto her shirt until it slips over her head and it's resting in my hands. She grabs more stars and stands and heads towards the front door with her hands clasped to her bra, still trying to hold on to them. Lake, you aren't going outside without a shirt on, I say. She's relentless. Watch me, she says. I jump up and wrap my arms around her waist and pick her up. Just as I'm able Just as I'm about to release her onto the couch, the front door swings open. I look over my shoulder and Reese walks in with a handful of groceries. He pauses and stares at his wide eyes. Lake is still trying to struggle free from my grasp, ignoring the fact that someone she doesn't even know has a front row seat to her trauma. No, to her tantrum. Yeah, I'm going with trauma, it's more accurate. The only thing I can think of is the fact that she's in a bra in front of another guy. This is too much for even me to unpack. Are you okay, Colleen? Do you need to talk to someone? Anyway, blah blah blah, skip forward, Lakin goes home, Reese is like, ooh, the girl having a breakdown is cute, and then Will gets all possessive and it's all very weird. Not a fan. Will tells Reese everything that's gone on, and Reese is like, his only takeaway from this whole thing is, lol, can I ask Vaughn out now, please? What a good friend. Kirsten, the 11-year-old, comes round and Will bribes her to spy for him again, which is super healthy and normal, right? Also, why is this 23-year-old man just hanging out with an 11-year-old alone? And no. He tells Kirsten to get Lake to take her to the next slam poetry event because Will wants to try and win her back with another poetry performance. Will, we've all heard your poetry at this point. If this was the real world, this would not work. Also, I'm sorry, but like, even if you were good at writing poetry, which he's not, you broke her trust. You essentially cheated on her. You're not gonna undo all that and fix all that with a public poetry performance. It takes a lot more work to rebuild broken trust than just, ooh, I'm gonna perform a poem in front of a crowd. Chapter 9, we are halfway through the book. And so little has happened. God's sake. But we're halfway through. We can do this. Come on. I know Lake doesn't like me right now, but she definitely doesn't hate me either. I bet she does, and she should. I can't help but wonder if I should back off and give her the space she's asking for. Yes, you should. Part of me wants to respect where she's coming from, but part of me is scared that if I do back off, she may decide she likes the space. I'm terrified of that. So maybe I won't give her space. Here's a little hint, right? If she prefers the space to being with you, then she shouldn't be with you, okay? So just give her the space, let her see what she prefers, and decide for herself, yeah? You can't just force someone to be with you, you insane groomer abuser. He even says, I hate the fact that her need for space is stronger than her need for me. Just accept the breakup and let her move on. Move on yourself. But no, instead he thinks it's a good idea to go and sabotage her car so that in order to get to Detroit to pick up some textbooks that she needs, she has to drive with him. This is manipulative and disgusting and dangerous, right? So she has to get in the car with him and go to Detroit. On the way, he gets impatient that she's not talking to him and is like, this space thing is really starting to annoy me. Like, get used to it. She dumped you. He says, you'd think after a year I would have found a way to get through to her or to manipulate her in some way. She's almost impenetrable. I'm sorry, what? You think the longer you're with someone, the better you get at manipulating them? No. That's not healthy or normal. And then instead of taking her to go and pick up the textbook that she needs, he just drives to his... Sorry, my tummy's grumbling. He just drives to his grandparents' house and forces her to have dinner with them because that's not kidnapping. While they're in the grandparents' house, he traps her in a laundry room until she talks to him. For the fourth time in 4 Colleen Hoover videos, I have to ask, what is with this woman writing men who trap women in rooms? It has happened in every single Colleen Hoover book that I've read, and it is not healthy. I can't cope with this. It's not sexy to be trapped in a room. It's not romantic to trap someone in a room. It's not normal to have a fixation on men trapping women in rooms. Colleen Hoover, get some therapy. She tries to move past me again, but I continue to block her way. She's flush against me now as she pathetically tries to shove against my chest to get by. I have to fight the urge to wrap my arms around her. We're practically face to face when she finally gives up again and stops pushing me. She inches from me now, staring at the floor, waiting for me to get out of her way. She may have her doubts about my feelings for her, but there's no way she can doubt the sexual tension between us. I take her chin in my hand and gently pull her face towards mine. Stop it! Stop it right now. Dinner's awkward. Will makes this weird point of telling his grandma that Laken's a virgin. I don't know why. At this point in reading the book, I kind of wanted to go and have a little cry. When they get back home, Laken is like, I'm starting to think we're only together because of our shared trauma, which is exactly what I said in the last video. She has a good point. She is smarter than I gave her credit for. This breakup is the right call. End the book there. Please. Please. And then Laken makes another very good point that it matters, Will. It matters because 5 or 10 years from now, those external factors aren't going to be at play in our relationship anymore. It'll just be you and me. My biggest fear is you'll wake up one day and realise all the reasons you're in love with me are gone. See, she's smart for once. Good on her. It doesn't last, though. Will is like, my God, everything she said makes sense. She's completely wrong, but it makes sense. I get it. I can see why she's questioning everything. I can see why she doubts me now. Ugh, this man-child. Why is he like this? Well, Colleen Hoover, who is also I don't know, a man-child, because she's a woman. She's like a teenager trapped in a 40-year-old's body, which is not something anyone wants, is it? The chapter ends and we get another of Will's poems. This one has a nice bit of sexism in there too, so that's fun, right? Mixing it up a bit. The heart of a man is no heart at all if it isn't loved by a woman. The heart of a woman is no heart at all if her heart isn't loving a man. But the heart of a man and a woman in love can be worse than not having a heart, because at least if you have no heart at all, it can't die when it breaks apart. Shut up. Just shut up, for God's sake. Chapter 10. You know, it's crazy. This book is a whole 30 pages shorter than the first one in the series, and yet it feels infinitely longer. Weird that, isn't it? I would like my time back, please. Will decides it's totally appropriate to sneak into Laken's house while she's at college for reasons. He's caught by Sherry, who's like, come talk to me, and decides to show him a video of when she was just 19, and she is proposed to by this guy in a video. She's not asked, he doesn't ask her if she wants to marry him, he tells her to marry him. So we have another Colleen Hoover couple who have been together since they were barely not children, and another man who is forceful and tells the woman what to do and doesn't really give her a choice. I hate it. Sherry's like, you and Laken have a connection like us, and it's really annoying because Colleen Hoover really does have a habit of telling us how we should be feeling instead of showing us and making us feel something. Like, a lot of people in the premiere of the last video were saying about the mum's cancer storyline, that Colleen doesn't, basically people were saying, like, I know I should feel sad about cancer, like, even people in my family have had cancer, but I don't feel sad about this storyline in the book because Colleen doesn't know how to make me feel sad in her writing, and I thoroughly agree. I think people are making really, really good points, and it's kind of the same here, you know? Colleen tells us, this person has cancer, so you should feel sad, instead of saying, this person has cancer, which affects them and their family in this and this and this and this way, and the reader just feels sad as a consequence. I'm so sorry, my tummy's grumbling so much, I'm hungry. And it's the same here. We're told, Will and Laken are such a good couple. Oh my God, they had this special love that's not like anything else. Oh, we need to root for Will and Laken, blah, blah, blah. But we never actually see them being a good couple. We never see why they work together. We never see anything other than a bit of lust between them. Nothing's really built up to actually make us root for them. We're just told we should be, and we just have to accept that. It's poor writing from Colleen once again. Anyway, there's a massive shock. It turns out that the man on Sherry's video isn't her now husband. Oh my God. Apparently she didn't marry the man on the tape. And I was like, wow, okay, that's a first for Colleen Hoover. Showing that, like, you know, you can be completely in love with someone and it not work out and you decide to break up. I was like, this is brilliant, this is great. But no, it ends up just being really, really disappointing. It turns out she just didn't marry this man because he's dead. But we don't find that out till later, so it's not really that much of a shock. Anyway, Sherry's like, I love my husband David, but it's not the true love I had with Jim. You have true love with Laken, so hold on to it. And I'm like, wow, poor David. Like, not only justice for the gnomes, but justice for David, right? Like, can you imagine, like, knowing that you're some person's second choice? And that they just married you because, you know, ooh, their first choice died, so I guess we'll settle for you. Horrible. God's sake. Anyway, turns out Will's big plan to win Laken back is another poem. So Will's friends and family are like, it's okay, we'll help with this. We'll get her to the slam poetry event and physically trap her so she has to listen to you. Please stop trapping women, I beg. Please. Reese randomly is remembered and appears in Will's house. He's living there now for some reason. And is like, ooh, me and Vaughn are doing the sexy, sexy times. So it seems like Vaughn's part in the plot is just over and done with. And Reese was literally only introduced to, like, pair her off so she wouldn't be a threat to Will and Laken anymore. Stupid, I know. Colleen finally remembers that, oh, wait, Will's supposed to be a college student doing his masters and he has a class with Vaughn. Better bring that up again. So Will is all like, ooh, I hope she doesn't sit next to me in class today. But she does, and then Vaughn actually reveals that she started dating Reese originally, like 2 months after her and Will broke up, like 3 years ago? I don't know how long ago. Whenever they broke up. We're meant to be shocked by this and be like, oh my god, but they were together 2 years and then she just started dating his best friend 2 months later. How terrible, how awful. I don't care. I really don't care. But Will decides that because he's so totally over Vaughn and into Laken, that he is going to get angry and kick Reese out of his house. It's too many names, I can't speak. Yeah, he's angry at his best friend who we've never met before for sleeping with his ex because he's over. I don't know. Let's be honest, nothing is going to change in the plot, is it? Why are we even going through this? Yeah. Next morning, Will wakes up and finds a half-naked Vaughn in his kitchen, along with a half-naked Reese. And because he's totally cool with them dating, he beats Reese up. Yes, that's a man who's totally moved on from his ex and should be in a serious relationship with someone else, right? I lunge forward and punch the shit out of him. As soon as my fist meets his face, it's agony. Vaughn is screaming at me as I back away from him, holding onto my fist with my other hand. Such a mature and reasonable response, right? Will is such a mature, well-adjusted adult. I thoroughly understand why he has so many women swooning for him. Swooning for him? Yeah, that's how you phrase it, right? They like him. I don't know why. Reese doesn't punch Will back because he's an adult, I guess. So Reese leaves, Vaughn leaves, Will sulks in his bedroom. Chapter 11. It's the slam poetry event. Laken is trapped, as expected, by her friends and family, and Will gets up to do his poem, which he titles, the completely original, Because of You. Kelly Clarkson is sobbing in a corner right now, and I will be joining her shortly. If you were in the chat of the premiere for the first video, I just need to warn you now, there is more gnome violence coming up, so, you know, just be prepared for that, okay? I'm warning you now. Another warning, this is really, really bad, okay? It's not a poem. It's not a poem. It's just him recounting his relationship with a few line breaks. There are moments in every relationship that define when two people start to fall in love. A first glance, a first glance, a first smile, a first kiss, a first fall. I remove the Darth Vader house shoes from my satchel and look down at them. You were wearing these during one of those moments. One of the moments I first started to fall in love with you. The way you gave me butterflies that morning had absolutely nothing to do with anyone else and everything to do with you. I was falling in love with you that morning because of you. I take the next item out of the satchel. When I pull it out and look up, she brings her hand to her mouth in shock. This ugly little gnome with his smug little grin. Rude? At least that gnome isn't a groomer like you. He's the reason I had an excuse to invite you into my house, into my life. You took a lot of aggression out on him over those next few months. I would watch from my window as you would kick him over every time you walked by him. Poor little guy. You were so tenacious. That feisty, aggressive, strong-willed side of you. The side of you that refused to take crap from this concrete gnome. The side of you that refused to take crap from me. I fell in love with that side of you because of you. I set the gnome down on the stage and grabbed the CD. This is your favourite CD. Laken's shit. although I know you intended for shit to be possessive rather than descriptive. Stating the obvious doesn't make something poetry. The banjo started playing through the speakers of your car, and I immediately recognised my favourite band. Then, when I realised it was your favourite band too, the fact these same lyrics inspired both of us, I fell in love with that about you. That had absolutely nothing to do with anyone else. I fell in love with that about you because of you. Yeah, better hope he never goes to a Abbott Brothers concert, right? Otherwise he's going to be falling in love with everyone there. Wait, you like this band too? Oh my god, me too. Oh my... It's going to be a massive orgy for Will, isn't it? I take a slip of paper out of the satchel and hold it up. When I look at her, I see Eddie slide her a napkin. I can't tell from up here, but that can only mean she's crying. At this? Maybe because it's so bad. In my original notes here, I said, she must be hormonal or she really hates bad poetry as much as I do. At time of writing, I'm currently both, and I want to cry. Oh god, I did not like this poem. This is a receipt I kept. Only because the item I purchased that night was on the verge of ridiculous. Chocolate milk on the rocks? Who orders that? She didn't order that. You ordered that for her. She asked for chocolate milk. You added the on the rocks bit to be funny. Yeah, I remember this better than you. You were different, and you didn't care. You were being you. A piece of me fell in love with you at that moment. Because of you. This? I hold up another sheet of paper. This I didn't really like so much. It's the poem you wrote about me. The one you titled, Mean? I don't think I ever told you. But you made a 0. And then I kept it, to remind myself of all the things I never want to be to you. So for context here, if you missed the first book, while he was her teacher and grooming her, they had this assignment in class to write a poem, and she used her assignment to publicly call him a bunch of names. What we're getting here is new information that he scored her a 0 for this, which just proves he was abusing his power once again, in even more ways than we thought. Your grooming victim didn't do what you wanted, so you punished her academically. That's disgusting. I pull her shirt from my bag. When I hold it into the light, I sigh into the microphone. This is that ugly shirt you wear. It doesn't really have anything to do with why I fell in love with you. I just saw it at your house and thought I'd steal it. Yeah, that's just creepy, right? I pulled the second to last item out of my bag, her purple hair clip. She told me once how much it meant to her and why she always keeps it. This purple hair clip. It really is magic, just like your dad told you it was. It's magic because no matter how many times it lets you down, you keep having hope in it. You keep trusting it. No matter how many times it fails you, you never fail it. Just like you never fail me. I love that about you, because of you. I set it back down and pull out a strip of paper and unfold it. Your mother. I sigh. Your mother was an amazing woman, Lake. I'm blessed that I got to know her, and that she was a part of my life too. I came to love her as my own mum, just as she came to love Calder and I as her own. I didn't love her because of you, Lake. I loved her because of her, so thank you for sharing her with us. She had more advice about life and love and happiness and heartache than anyone I've ever known. But the best advice she gave me, the best advice she ever gave us, I read the quote in my hands. Sometimes 2 people have to fall apart to realize how much they need to fall back together. She's definitely crying now. I place the slip back inside the satchel and take a step closer to the edge of the stage as I hold her gaze. When is this poem going to end? Seriously. The last item I have wouldn't fit because you're actually sitting in it. That booth. You're sitting in the exact same spot you sat in when you watched your first performance on this stage. The way you watched the stage with passion in your eyes, I'll never forget that moment. It's the moment I knew it was too late. I was too far gone by then. I was in love with you. I was in love with you because of you. And you'd know all of 20 minutes at that point. Stop it. I back up and sit down on the stool behind me, still holding her stare. I could go on all night, Lake. I could go on and on and on about all the reasons I'm in love with you. And you know what? Some of them are things that life has thrown our way. I do love you because you're the only person I know that understands my situation. I do love you because both of us know what it's like to lose your mum and your dad. I do love you because you're raising your little brother just like I am. I love you because of what you went through with your mother. I love you because of what we went through with your mother. I love the way you love Kel. I love the way you love Calder. I love the way I love Kel. So I'm not about to apologize for loving all these things about you, no matter the reason for all the circumstances behind them. And no, I don't need days or weeks or months to think about why I love you. It's an easy answer for me. I love you because of you. Because of every single thing about you. I hate it. This is terrible. This is not a poem. Just... oh, God. And also, I'm sorry, but like, how is this meant to win her trust back? Because none of this explains or excuses why you were sneaking around with your ex and lying about it. You can't be all like, oh my god, I love you this much and because of these reasons, and then still be cuddling your ex on your bed and kissing her. Like, I feel like that's more of a red flag, right? Ugh. I wrote in my original script, if Laken takes him back after this mess, then I'll throw my iPad out of the train window. Actually, this train doesn't have windows that open, but if it did... I was writing this on the way to and from Blackpool this weekend, and yeah, I was getting very, very annoyed on the train. I was not happy. I take a step back from the microphone when I'm finished. I keep my eyes locked on hers, and I'm not sure because she's pretty far away, but I think she mouths, I love you. The stage lights come back up and I'm blinded. I can't see her anymore. And everyone else in the room who was there to see poetry was like, what the hell is this? Maybe keep your domestics private in future, yeah? Just an idea. Before I take another step, she rushes to me and throws her arms around my neck, almost knocking me backwards. I'm sorry, Will. I'm so sorry. She kisses me on the cheek, the neck, the lips, the nose, the chin. She keeps saying she's sorry over and over between each kiss. Yeah, remind me, again, what the hell does she have to be sorry for? He groomed her. He abused her. He got violent with her repeatedly. He lied to her. He betrayed her. He cheated on her. He's smooching with another woman on his bed. What does she have to be sorry for? I don't see it anymore. The heartache. She's not heartbroken anymore. Come on. Anyone who has ever been cheated on knows that trust is not this easy to regain. Betrayal is not this easy to get over. You don't just say, oh, but I love you, and then everything is fixed. Also, we still have 100 pages to go in this book. How? It's actually quite funny. Again, in my script that I was writing on the train, I said, knowing Colleen Hoover, it's probably so she has time to kill someone off. We haven't had a death yet this book, which is really unusual for her. We've got through 200 pages so far, and honestly, nothing's really happened. And yet we've had the big heartfelt resolution already. So, I don't know, someone's gonna die. I was close. She very nearly kills someone. So I was not 100% right, but I was close. My guess was half decent. My heart is pounding against my chest because I realise I've never been so sure about the rest of my life than I am in this moment. This girl is the rest of my life. Thank you, she says when she pulls away, for what you did up there tonight, and for trapping me in the booth so I couldn't leave. You know me too well. Yeah, can we stop thanking men for trapping us in places and emotionally manipulating us, please? Maybe that's something we could work on, yeah? Not doing that. He's even like, haha, you were really hard to manipulate, as if that's a cute thing. Eddie has more nausea and starts vomiting because pregnancy, and then they all go home. So they're driving in 2 cars. Will and basically all the men and boys are in 1 car, and then Laken and all the women and girls are in the other car for reasons. And then they're driving along, and bam, a car crash. Yay. Will, Gavin yells. My first instinct is to slam on the brakes, but I'm not sure why I'm slamming on the brakes. I glance at Gavin and his eyes are glued to the oncoming traffic in the lanes to the left of us. I turn my head and see it just as the truck crosses the median and hits the car in front of us. Lake's car. I was like, I literally just wrote that comment about Colleen killing someone off and then this. Come on. On to part 2 of the book, and this starts with chapter 12. Kel and Calder are absolutely fine. I'm not sure what just happened. We must have been hit or we ran off the road. The back windshield is busted and there's glass all over the car. The boys don't look cut anywhere. I look at Gavin and he's swinging his door open. He tries to jump out the car, but he's stuck in his seatbelt. He's frantic, trying to unlatch. My eyes follow the broken glass to the median on the right of the highway. I see it, her car. I break out into a run and until I reach the car. Gavin's on the passenger side. He's pulling Eddie out of the car, so I run around to help him. Her eyes are closed, but she winces when I pull on her arm. She's okay. I glance inside the car, but Lake's not there. Her driver's side door is wide open. A sense of relief washes over me when I realise she must be okay if she's able to walk away. My eyes dart to the back seat, and I see Kirsten. As soon as Eddie's lying on the ground, I climb into the backseat and shake Kirsten. Kirsten, I say. She doesn't respond. She's got blood on her, but I'm not sure where it's coming from. And at this point, I was like, okay, Colleen's either going to kill the kid or Eddie's baby, right? Has to be, right? Sadly, neither. She doesn't actually kill anyone, which is a bit of a shame. I often joke about Colleen Hoover needing to kill someone or have some death in her books or whatever and it being like too off the top, but actually I think this book would have benefited from it. I really do. Ideally, I'd want Will killed off, but sadly that doesn't happen. So Gavin tries to help the kid, Kirsten, but then Will's like, where's Lake? She's still missing. Turns out she's wandered out of the car, she's gone into some field, and she's just lying in the snow. And Will's like, oh my god, where is she? And he starts looking around for her. When I finally reach her, she's just lying there in the snow with her eyes closed. There's blood on her head. So much blood. I tear off my jacket and throw it in the snow and remove my shirt. I begin wiping the blood off her face with it, trying desperately to find her injuries. Lake, no, Lake, no. I touch her face with my hand, trying to gain some sort of reaction out of her. It's cold. She's so cold. As soon as I put my hands under her shoulders to pull her into my lap, someone pulls me back. Paramedics swarm her as I'm being pulled away from her. I can't see her anymore. I can't see her. Again, I said, honestly, if Colleen kills Laken, I actually won't complain. But sadly, no, she doesn't kill off Laken. Bad times. Will has a panic attack. Laken is taken away in an ambulance. Chapter 13. We are nearly done, I promise. We're getting through this now. We got this. Everyone's been taken to hospital in ambulances. And I was like, because this is America, they're going to be crippled by medical bills, right? Oof, they are going to have debt for like the rest of their lives because of this whole thing. As soon as the ambulance doors open and they pull me out, I jump off the gurney. Sir, get back here, you need stitches. I'm sorry, but like I couldn't help laughing at this. Because does anyone else imagine Will looking a bit like Paul of Paul and Morgan? Like, with the aggressive, violent behaviour and the manipulation and everything, I get the impression... Like, I imagine Paul when I read these books. I really do. And I will never tire of watching that clip of Paul that he posted, he chose to post this, of him playing pickleball. And he just looks like a big praying mantis. Now, I can't speak. I'm very lanky. I have very long arms and legs for my body, and I'm just a bit sticky as well. But it just makes me laugh. Anyway, this is what I imagine when Will's running through the hospital looking for Laken. This is exactly what I picture. So they all run into hospital trying to find what happened to the women and Kirsten, and they're all at the nurse's station, and the nurse asks, are you family? Gavin looks at me, then back at her. Yes, he lies. I'm sorry, but how is this a lie? You've got Laken's little brother, you're Laken's partner, Eddie is Gavin's partner and literally carrying his baby. Kirsten is the only one there that isn't family, so you could say that, but like, other than that, how is it a lie? After an embarrassing amount of time, Will finally remembers to call Kirsten's mum, and he also lies to the nurses saying that Laken is his wife, and he fills in her name on the paperwork as Laken Cooper. Cooper being his surname, not hers. Now, I was really bothered by this because I don't really know how the healthcare system works in America, but in the UK, that could seriously mess up a lot of stuff, putting down the wrong name. Because like each of us has a unique NHS number, and with that it's got basically like our entire medical history tied to that. And if you don't have your NHS number, you can get it with just your name and date of birth and, you know, stuff like that. So you need to give the doctors the right name, otherwise they're not going to have access to your medical history and they could do something that's really going to harm you. And like, especially if you're unconscious, they need to know your medical history because, you know, otherwise it could mess you up. What if you have an allergy? What if you have to go and have scans and stuff, but you've got like metal bits in your body because you've had, I don't know, like a hip replacement or a false limb or something, or you've got staples somewhere inside you. What if you're allergic to a certain anesthetic? What if you have an intolerance for this or that? Like, any of that stuff. What if you're on prescription medication? They need to know your medical history. So giving the wrong name means they're not going to have access to that. So it could kill her. It feels irresponsible and stupid, right? This could literally get Laken killed. Ridiculous. Anyway, turns out the kid, Kirsten, is going to be fine. She's just got a broken arm and a little bit of a concussion. I said, so I reckon they're definitely going to kill off Eddie's baby. No, they didn't. The baby's fine too. And then I also wrote in the script, I'm quite scared that because of this pretend wife stuff, this is going to cause Will to propose to Laken if she survives. She's 19. Stop it. If he proposes to her and they get married, I will throw myself off this train, never mind my iPad. It took so much willpower to not throw myself off the train. Colleen drags out this suspense of what's going to happen to Laken over like 6 pages, and honestly, I could not care less. See what I did there, Colleen? I used the right version of it. Could not. Turns out that Laken needs brain surgery. Oh god, I was brutal here. In my notes I put, ooh, maybe this will make her smarter and she'll realise she needs to leave her groomer. Maybe not. I was brutal, wasn't I? Oof. Chapter 14, Will's grandparents turn up at the hospital. Apparently it's been hours and Will still hasn't filled out the very important paperwork for Laken because, and I quote, I don't feel like doing paperwork right now. Okay, I get that, you're worried about her, but her doctors are going to need to know her medical history. They're going to need to know basics about her, like if she's on prescription medication, her allergies. They're going to need to know her blood type. If they're doing brain surgery on her, literally life-saving surgery, they are going to need to know her blood type. And you haven't even bothered to give them that because you just can't be bothered to fill out the paperwork. His laziness could be killing her. Ridiculous. Will's finally told to actually do it, and he's like, I don't know any of this stuff. I don't know this, and it's crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. You're all there. You've been telling me for the last 2 books. She's the most important part of my life. She's my true love. And you don't know basic things about her, like her blood, well, I say blood type. I don't even know my own blood type, so I'll forgive that one. But you don't know basic things about her, like if she has insurance, if she has any allergies, if she's on any medication. How do you not know this stuff? Me and Kieran know all that stuff about each other, and if we had an emergency, we're there to sort each other out, you know? That's what you do in a partnership. When I've been ill before, he's happily gone and picked up my prescription medication for me. When I ended up in hospital in December with the ovarian cysts, and I told him everything that was happening and whatever, he was my emergency contact there. He swooped straight in to save the day and look after Kyra for me while I was in the hospital overnight and everything, and it's just, that's what you do with your partners. This just shows to me that Will and Laken's relationship is so immature, which isn't such a bad thing for Laken. She's 19, it doesn't have to be serious, but it just proves to me that they're not ready for what they're about to do. It just bothers me so much. It really does. To distract himself from everything, Will talks to Gavin about kicking Reese out of his house for sleeping with his ex, and then he brags about punching him and says that the violence was beautiful. Yeah, that's an actual quote, and all that nonsense. More pages of nothing pass. It's quite boring. Eddie and the baby are okay, and it turns out she's a whole 16 weeks pregnant, and she's having a girl. I don't care. Laken is now out of surgery, but not out of danger yet. Blah, 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 blah. I feel like this would all be more emotionally intense if we actually cared about any of these characters, right? Just a thought. Chapter 15. Literally nothing happens for even more pages. Laken is moved to a ward and she's still unconscious, so Will thinks it's a good idea to literally crawl into bed with her and sleep with her for days. Not like sex sleep, just sleep next to her. Like, I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. She is literally recovering from brain surgery. She is in a coma. Oh my god, and I don't know if you've ever seen how small a hospital bed is, but they're not big. They are absolutely not big. And she's probably stuffed to the brim with, like, she's got a breathing tube, she's got, what are they called? Nope, the word is not coming to me. When they put the needles in you so they can attach lines and stuff, and yeah, she's got all of that stuff in her, and he's there crawling on top of her and, you know, taking what little space she has just so he can sleep next to her. I'm like, let her recover. Give her some space. You don't need to be all over her. I don't get how the hospital allowed this. But apparently the nurses in the hospital really like Will, so they let him break any rules he wants, which is ridiculous. And again, this is a telling, not showing situation, because why do they like him? He hasn't done anything to make them like him. All he's done is shout at them occasionally. Why do they like him? Other than, oh my god, Will's just so special, everyone likes him. He doesn't deserve any special treatment. After more pages of absolutely nothing happening, Laken wakes up and says Will's name, but it turns out she can't remember the accident. There's literally a whole half a page of them just saying hey to each other over and over. I'm not even joking. I feel like Colleen just wanted to get her word count up. Laken tells Will, I remember going to the slam, she says. I remember your poem, but that's all. That's all I remember. She opens her eyes again and looks at me. Did I forgive you? I laugh. Yes, you forgave me and you love me. A bunch. I'm sorry, but if she can't even remember, like, forgiving him, why is she believing this? Are you just gonna trust him again after everything he did? I wouldn't. Everyone comes to the hospital to visit Laken, and we get this really gross scene from Eddie and Gavin. Like, he's babying her and barely letting her walk, and she's like, I'm pregnant, not injured, stop it. And he's like, I'm sorry, babe, I just worry about you. He leans forward and kisses her stomach. Both of you. Even with pregnant people, can we not, like, kiss their stomachs in public, please? That's a bit weird, right? What do I know? I just find all pregnancy scary. Will goes, it's good to see he's accepted his new role as a dad. I know they've got a lot of hurdles ahead of them, but I have faith they'll make it. Because Colleen Hoover cannot accept that some people just don't want to be parents. And then Eddie's like, ooh, you know what Laken needs after brain surgery? Makeup. I'll be back at 2. And she comes back to give Laken a makeover in her hospital bed after she's just woken up from a coma. I can't deal with this. Will tries to get some rest, but I can't get comfortable in the chair, so I resort to lying in the floor again. Another typo? Really? There's so many of these. Sherry turns up at the hospital and her and Will have this bonding moment, and she comes back to talking about the guy in the video again that she showed Will earlier. His name was Jim. Apparently he was killed a year later, a year after he proposed, in a car wreck. So this is why she didn't marry him and she's married to the other guy, because he died in a car accident. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not really important, but it's kind of ridiculous. We've now had, in 2 books, right, in this series, 2 books, we've had 3 car accidents and 3 people dead from car accidents. 5 people in total have died over 2 books. Colleen Hoover just cannot resist killing people off, can she? Anyway, none of this is really important. It's not really significant. Blech. Let's just move on. Chapter 16, and it opens with, I think it's meant to be a poem? I've learned something about my heart. It can break. It can be ripped apart. It can harden and freeze. It can stop. Completely. It can shatter into a million pieces. It can explode. It can die. The only thing that made it start beating again. The moment you opened your eyes. Do I even need to comment on this nonsense anymore? We all know it's terrible, right? And I think we can all see why. The chapter... Oh, God, I forgot this was even in here. This is awful. Right, the chapter opens on this really awkward moment where the nurse tells Will that Laken needs a bath, and either she, the nurse, can help her, or Will can help her. And he thinks, Laken and I look at each other. It's not like I've never seen her naked, just not for prolonged periods of time, and with the lights on. I'm sorry, but she's just had brain surgery, and she just needs someone to help her with the basics, like washing the blood from a serious accident off her body. This is not a sexy moment. Can we please not make this all about your erection? The nurse can sense the slight awkwardness between us. I'm sorry, I thought you guys were married. It said on her chart that you were her husband. See, just another reason not to lie to people. So he's like, no, it's fine, don't worry, I'll help her, I'll do it. So he helps her into the bath, and for some reason he's shocked that she's covered in bruises. Did you not just see what she went through? But she's like, thank you. Thank you for not trying to put the movers on me just now. I smile at her. Don't thank me yet. We just got started. I'm sorry, again, car accident, brain surgery, nearly dead. Stop thinking with your genitals. And you don't need to thank him for not trying to sleep with you immediately after you nearly died. That should be common decency, not something you have to thank him for. And then And I hate this bit. So remember, she's bruised, she's battered, she's got a giant gaping hole in her head that's just been sewn back up, and she's filthy as well. This is her first bath since the accident, so she's covered in dried blood and mud and everything. She's filthy. She's trying to get it all off her and stuff. And Will decides the best thing to do is to get into the bath with her. The teeny tiny little hospital bath. He doesn't give her any space. He's like, I'm getting in with you. But he keeps his trousers on so he can help her wash. Weird. It's such a weird scene. I hate all of this. No. Laken comes home. Nothing much happens. Whatever. Kirsten, the kid, decides that when she thought she was going to die, all she could think about was eating meat. So now she's not a vegetarian anymore, which is a really odd and unnecessary thing to include in the book. And I just get the sense that Colleen Hoover just doesn't respect vegetarians, and that bothers me. I'm not even a vegetarian myself. I just don't get why she has to be like this. Will, Kel, and Kirsten... No. Colder Kel and Kirsten are all like, you're still coming to our school for Dad Day, right, Will? And Laken's like, oh god, I hate this bit. I keep forgetting how bad these bits are. Will's like, I don't know if I need to stay here and look after Laken. But then Laken's like, oh no, it's fine. I don't need babying. You can go. And he's like, but you are my baby. So it's a Dad Day thing. And Will goes into school, sits with the kids, and then he uses this as an excuse to literally threaten the 12-year-old child who's bullying Kirsten. Don't get me wrong, I know how bad bullying is. I faced a hell of a lot of bullying when I was a teenager in particular. I know how awful it can be, and I would have loved someone to stand up for me. However, I don't think a 23-year-old man threatening a 12-year-old boy with violence and telling him that he has a bit of a temper is the right way to deal with anything. You don't stop bullying by bullying children, you know? Like, Will literally says to this child, this small child, let me be frank with you. That girl is very important to me. Very important. When bad things happen to important people in my life, I don't take it very well. I guess you could say that I have a bit of a temper. I scoot my chair closer to his and look him straight in the eye. Now, while we're being frank with one another, you should know I used to be a teacher. You know why I'm not a teacher anymore, Mark? He isn't smiling anymore. He shakes his head. I don't teach anymore because one of my dickhead students decided to mess with one of my important people. It didn't end well. And once again, we're seeing Will boast about his violent, jealous outburst from the first book, where he thought a guy was kissing Laken, like another kid in his class, one of his students. He thought he was kissing Laken, so he literally beat him up to like within an inch of his life. That's not something to brag about. You can take that as a threat if you want, Mark, but honestly, I have no intentions of hurting you. After all, you're only 12. When it comes to kicking someone's ass, I usually draw the line at 14-year-olds. Oh, how noble. This guy better not go back to teaching because he should not be around children. At all. Ever. He then calls the kid a pathetic human being, and the child in me kind of wants to chant, takes one to know one, but I'm more mature than Will, so I refuse to do that. Chapter 17, we get a couple of weeks time jump. Again, nothing much has happened. It's the kids' talent show, and Will is like, I didn't even know Calder had any talent. That's his brother. Kirsten then gets up to perform a poem, which, oh god, I hate this so much. This is like the culmination of all the stupid in-jokes in this book so far. Like, you know the whole thing about replacing swear words with the word butterfly? Yeah, that's what this poem is. It's meant to be about her, like, standing up to her bullies or whatever, but we know in real life if she did this, the bullying would get worse. That's what would happen in real life. I don't like that would happen, but that is what would happen. She would get ripped apart because kids are cruel. Butterfly. What a beautiful word. What a delicate creature. Delicate like the cruel words that flow right out of your mouths and the food that flies right out of your hands. Does it make you feel better? Does it make you feel good? Does picking on a girl make you more of a man? Well, I'm standing up for myself, like I should have done before. I'm not putting up with your butterfly anymore. Kirsten slides the sack off her wrist and opens it, pulling out a handful of handmade butterflies. She takes a microphone out of the stand and begins walking down the stairs as she continues to speak. I'd like to extend to others what others have extended to me. She walks up to Mrs. Brill first and holds out a butterfly. Butterfly, you, Mrs. Brill. Mrs. Brill smiles at her and takes the butterfly out of her hand. Lake laughs out loud and I have to nudge her to get her to be quiet. Kirsten walks around the room, passing out butterflies to several students, including 3 from the lunchroom. Butterfly you, Mark. Butterfly you, Brendan. Butterfly you, Colby. When she finishes passing out the butterflies, she walks back on to the stage and places the microphone back in the stand. I have one thing to say to you, and I'm not referring to the bullies or the ones they pursue. I'm referring to those of you that just stand by, the ones who don't take up for those of us that cry, those of you who just turn a blind eye. After all, it's not you it's happening to. You aren't the one being bullied. You aren't the one being rude. It isn't your hands that's throwing the food. But it is your mouth not speaking up. It is your feet not taking a stand. It is your arm not lending a hand. It is your heart not giving a damn. So take up for yourself, take up for your friends. I challenge you to be someone who doesn't give in. Don't give in, don't let them win. Can we please just stop pretending that simply stating your feelings out loud into a microphone is a poem? Weirdly, Will and everyone else cheers for Kirsten. It's weird, okay. Then Calder gets up and performs a poem too. Again, it's just exposition with line breaks, except we already know everything that happened in this poem. They aren't good poems, they aren't interesting, they don't add anything to the story. This is just about Calder being sad that his parents died, and we already know that he's sad that his parents died, because that was half of the first book. I really don't care. I'm not even going to read this one out loud, because it's boring. Next up, it is Will and Laken's date night. He recreates their first date, by which I mean he makes some grilled cheese sandwiches, which they eat in the car. They play a weird game of Would You Rather. And then he blindfolds her, which is new, and since it's Will doing this, I'm just going to call it what it is, which is creepy as hell. I wrote in my script, we all know what's coming here, right? Colleen Hoover is going full Pretty Little Liars and making Laken marry her groomer. Has to be, right? If that's not what's happening, I will give up lemonade for a whole month, and I love lemonade. I'm not giving up lemonade. I was right. He drives her around for a while before they just end up back at his house again, and he says that it's just that some things don't need to be done on a stage. Some things need to be private. This is one of them. I'm going to argue that everything you two have done on a stage should have been private. This is not the only one. I sit down beside her on the couch and take her hand in mine, looking her straight in the eyes. Lake, I have something to say. I want you to hear me out without interruption, okay? I start to say what I need to say, but something doesn't feel right. I don't like how we're so formally seated. It's not us. I grab her leg and arm and pull her onto my lap. She straddles me, wrapping her legs around my back. She hangs her hands loosely around my neck and looks into my eyes. He then repeatedly berates her for interrupting him, before he eventually just shouts at her, "Damn it, Laken! Are you going to let me do this or not?" I take her hands and pull her up to a sitting position, then I get off the couch and kneel down on the floor in front of her. He then proposes to her with her mother's wedding ring, which seems like an odd choice for a proposal, right? Like, wedding rings are normally just like a simple band. Engagement rings tend to be like fancier with gems and stuff. So proposing with someone else's wedding ring seems like an odd choice, but who cares? I also thoroughly hate that the mum was planning for them to get married before they'd even known each other for a full year. She's like, oh god, right. She died giving her wedding ring to Will, being like, give this to Laken one day when you propose to her. And it's like, love, they've known each other like 4 months at this point when you've died. Like, can you not be trying to marry off your daughter to someone she barely knows? And worse than that, a teacher who groomed her. You're trying to get your daughter, your, at this point, 18-year-old daughter, to marry her groomer teacher. I hate these books. The proposal gets worse, though, because oh god, listen to this. I shake my head and laugh. That's just it, Lake. I'm not asking you to marry me. Before I can even get the rest of my sentence out, a look of horror washes across her face. I immediately put my finger to her lips and shush her before she interrupts me again. I know how you like to be asked and not told, but I'm not asking you to marry me. I roll on top of her and lean in as close as I can while still looking to her eyes. I lower my voice to a whisper. I'm telling you to marry me, Lake, because I can't live without you. She starts crying again and laughing. She's laughing and crying and kissing me all at the same time. We both are. I was so wrong, she says, between kisses. Sometimes a girl loves to be told. Oh, shut up. I hate all of this. I hate it. And also remember at this point, Laken is barely 19. She has barely been out of school for 5 months? And now she's marrying her English teacher. I hate these books. I hate them. This is somehow worse than Pretty Little Liars. TV series, not the books. Next chapter, and from the sounds of it, Will and Laken are planning to get married in 2 weeks' time. That's healthy. When Laken got out of the hospital, her and Will were like, oh my god, but what about sex? I'm not allowed to have sex for a whole month. So we'll plan to have sex exactly on March the 2nd, because Laken's virginity is still a big deal to us. And now they've decided to use March 2nd, the day they were going to have sex, as their wedding date, because, God, I don't even know anymore. This is ridiculous, right? There's some nonsense about how they have so much money. Oh my god, money is no problem. Everything is great. Money, money, money. And then they offer Laken's house to Eddie and Gavin for 6 months for free, no rent. And they say that they're going to move into Will's house together. I think the least believable part of these books is the financial stability of these teenagers with no jobs. Chapter 17 ends with a really weird line of, do you know what this means? Gavin says to Eddie. Kirsten's about to be our parallel neighbour. Now, for one, I didn't really know what a parallel neighbour was, but that's not the problem here. The problem is, Colleen Hoover got the name of her own character wrong. Kirsten. It's Kirsten. It's been Kirsten for the whole book, and now suddenly you're Kirstening. I can't. God's sake. Chapter 18 opens with another poem. It's all worth the aches, all the tears, the mistakes, the heart of a man and woman in love. It's worth all the pain in the world. I spent the last 2 weeks giving her every opportunity to opt out of doing things this way. Lake insists she doesn't want a traditional wedding, but I don't want her to regret her decision someday. Most girls spend years planning out how they want their wedding to be, but then, Lake's not most girls. We know, she told us 5 times in the first book. So it's the day of the wedding. Will is wearing a t-shirt and jeans. Laken is wearing jeans and, I quote, "That damn ugly shirt I love to hate. If I could have handpicked myself what she would wear on our wedding day, it would be exactly this." Ooh, quirky. Just as they're about to get married, Laken is literally counting down the hours until they have sex. She doesn't really even care about the wedding ceremony. She's just waiting to have sex with him. And I just wrote in my notes in all capital letters, what in the purity culture nonsense is this? This is, funnily enough, exactly how I imagine Paul of Paul and Morgan was on his wedding day before Morgan ran off to puke. It's so weird. They literally can't stop kissing each other throughout the entire ceremony. And then they go to a hotel room and they're like, this is it. We're having sex. And then fade to black, the book ends. That's it. I know. This one doesn't even have an epilogue, thankfully, but it does sadly have a sequel. Why? Why is any of this necessary? This sequel wasn't necessary. The original book wasn't necessary. God's sake. Okay, final thoughts. A conclusion. For a woman who these days writes pure smut, I am shocked that Colleen Hoover pushed this whole seemingly purity culture narrative in this book so hard. There's a lot of sex is better after marriage thing. There's a lot of get married quickly so you can have sex thing going on. It's very odd. Very odd. I feel like after reading this book, we can probably all agree that Will and Laken are a terrible couple, right? Absolutely. What do they really have going for them other than shared trauma and an attraction to each other? They both annoy each other often. They both argue a lot. They don't know anything about each other in serious situations, like in the hospital when one of them needed medical care. She can't trust him. He will emotionally cheat on her and break her boundaries with his ex at the first opportunity. He is a physically violent man with anger issues. He groomed her to get to this point. They are barely managing to raise kids together. And the kids they are raising have clear psychological issues. They give each other food poisoning for days because Will can't even manage to cook basic food safely. Are we really supposed to be rooting for this relationship? Because I'm not. At this point, I'm thoroughly dreading the next book, the third book, the final book in this series, and I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break before I cover it because I need it. I don't really see how we even need another book in this series. I don't see how there's any more that can be added or any more story that needs to be told, so I feel like it was probably just a cash grab on Colleen's end. But like I wrote in my notes, like I literally don't see where the plot can go from here, other than maybe a baby pregnancy / trying to get pregnant plot, and I really don't want to read that. You know what though, I do think if there is going to be a third book, what I would like to see and what I would enjoy to read is Will goes back to teaching, and he decides that now Laken is getting too old for him. He starts to groom another student, but this time that student isn't falling for his crap and reports him. And Laken suddenly realizes everything that happened to her was grooming and bad, and she sees Will for the creepy grooming predator that he is, and together her and the other student that he tried to groom go to the police, and he spends the rest of his life in prison. That's the third book in this series that I would like to read, but sadly I don't think that's what we're getting. So, there we go. Okay, that was Point of Retreat by Colleen Hoover. I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Thankfully, not as much grooming as the first book, but still a hell of a lot of messed up stuff. Colleen Hoover, I think she really just needs a lot of therapy, doesn't she, bless her? I feel sorry for her. I really, really worry about her. But yeah, that's me done for today. Thank you so much for watching today. If you are new here and you liked this video, it would be great if you want to subscribe. If you've been around a while, maybe just please check you're still subscribed. That would be great. If you would like to see what is going on in the rest of my life, then you can go follow me over on Instagram at Rachel Oates, but with a 0 instead of an O, because my name was taken and I'm annoying like that, and it's just one of those things. And I think that's pretty much everything for now. Okay, cool. Yeah, and with that, thank you so much for watching today. I cannot wait to read your thoughts down in the comment section, and I will see you all again very, very soon. Bye.